Coming up on Windows Weekly, Leo Laporte is out. I am subbing in today. And we have, as you might expect, Richard Campbell and Paul Thurrott here to talk about the Microsoft event. No, it was not the Surface event. It was kind of the AI event. Then we talk about what the heck is going on with Windows 11 23H2. We see a smile suddenly appear on Paul's face. It gets really kind of wild there for a second. Plus, we follow up on the news of Panos Panay leaving Microsoft and joining Amazon. We talk antitrust. We talk dev and AI, including Amazon's decision to buy Anthropic and maybe play catch up to what Microsoft is doing. Of course, we hit Xbox Corner and round things out with our tips of the week, including a whiskey from New Zealand, because that's where Richard Campbell is right now. Oh, it's so exciting. Stay tuned for this episode of Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Richard Campbell and Paul Thurrott, episode 848, recorded Wednesday, September 27th, 2023. The era of a grinning Paul. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by our friends at IT Pro TV, now called ACI Learning. Keep your IT team's skills up with the speed of technology. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit. Twit listeners can receive up to 65% off an IT Pro Enterprise Solution Plan after completing their form. Based on your team size, you'll receive a properly quoted discount tailored to your needs. And by Lookout. Whether on a device or in the cloud, your business data is always on the move. Minimize risk, increase visibility, and ensure compliance with Lookout's unified platform. Visit lookout.com today. It's time for Windows Weekly. This is the show where we talk to two of the most wonderful Windows watchers in the world. I am Micah Sargent, subbing in this week for Leo Laporte, who will be back next week. But until then, let us go to Ahawiti. Ahawiti, there we go. Ahawiti. In New Zealand, it's Richard Campbell. Hi, Richard.
Hi. Yeah, back down on the family farm. I gave you the pan. Yes, it really does look like Hobbiton. You know, Peter Jackson didn't have to build a set here, really. But
right.
That's good. I got in last night. We got a few days here to spend time with family. My cousin, who runs the farm, is turning 40.
Oh, so. Congratulations and happy birthday. It does look lovely. Absolutely. Now, Paul, I don't know if you have green pastures outside your door, but hopefully I just saw that you were in the midst of a move. Hopefully that's going well. Mm-hmm. Where are you coming to? From where are you coming to us currently?
I'm still in Macungie, Pennsylvania. There is, in fact, a field over there. You can't see it because it's behind trees, plus there is a wall. But yeah, we're moving. I mean, we won't actually move until November. It's kind of a family thing. So we're sort of pre-moving now, right? Getting the stuff out we can, just so it's not a mad rush at the end.
I have to commend you on that. That's incredible that you're not moving until November, but you've already started doing the move, because I'm very bad at that, and saving it up until the very end is so stressful. So good for you.
Yeah, I mean, we did this in, when was it, 2017 when we moved to Pennsylvania, but we also moved from that home to this place back in, I guess it was beginning of April, I think. Yeah, beginning of April. And that was a mad dash, and we will never do that again. So, we're lucky we didn't get hurt.
The last time I did a mad dash move, I ended up stressing out myself so much that I got Bell's palsy. And for several months, I couldn't move. I think it was the left side of my face. So I don't like moving. I like to be settled. So
no one likes moving. I'm not happy about this. Came out of nowhere. Like we were gonna extend the lease here for a year, but this just kind of came up. So
yeah, opportunity comes up.
Speaking of opportunities coming up, you had a golden opportunity to be in person at Microsoft, and you got to hang out with Mary Jo Foley at the event. That was very exciting.
Yeah, that was nice. Yeah, we went to dinner and caught up. I don't talk to her as much as I used to, right? I mean, this show was a nice reason for us to talk every single day,
right?
For a long time. It was great, and I feel bad about that. That's a kind of a personal failing I think her and I both share. But yeah, it was really, really nice to catch up with her. And, I don't know. The last time I was in New York, I think it was December. Last time I went to a Microsoft event was almost 4 years ago, which is incredible. Unprecedented, right? Stupid COVID. Anyway, yeah, it was a little bit like going back to high school a couple of years after you graduated. You recognize some people, you feel a lot of place. It's weird.
Did it all feel small? That's what I remember.
No, the space they were in was actually pretty nice, a pretty big space. But the event felt a little small, and we should talk about that.
Yeah, we had been calling it not you, but sort of internally, we had been calling it the Surface event.
A lot of people did.
And you kind of argue that it wasn't really the Surface event. So outside of maybe some beers you shared with Mary Jo Foley, what did Microsoft have to say there? And, especially in light of Panos Panay, I don't know, not playing a piano or something. How did it go?
Well, I think that has to play into it a little bit. We'll talk about Panos, I guess, later in the show, because there's some follow-ups to a bunch of the Blockbuster news that happened last week. And just remember, not that anyone would forget this, but if you were, I don't know, in a space capsule last week or something, Panos Panay suddenly was leaving Microsoft, not clear why. We sort of argued, pushed or jumped. There's been a little more data since then. We'll see. I think there's more story there. There was a massive
Xbox. Comfortable with my jumped position.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. There was a massive Xbox leak that may literally be the single biggest leak in Microsoft's history as far as divulging internal and third-party information. It's incredible. It's still, for me, it's still ongoing. I'm still writing about it every couple of days. I write another kind of mashup of information, based on, we'll talk about that later. And then of course the Microsoft special event, which, as you said, everyone's like, oh, it's a Surface event. I'm like, yeah, it's not a Surface event. The question I will ask, and this is sort of semi-rhetorical because no one here knows the answer to it really, probably, maybe Richard might actually, is Microsoft does typically have a Surface event in September. I think this happened after the show last week, but regardless, there was a news story, I think in Business Insider or Forbes or somewhere, saying that Panos might have jumped ship because of a number of things, one of which was Microsoft cutting back on Surface. And they had massive layoffs in Windows and Surface back in March, for sure. But also just cutting back. They have gotten a little experimental, a lot of extra devices, maybe more than they need. They're kind of all over the map. He was forced to kind of rein that in. And maybe this was going to be a Surface event. It would have been small, frankly, but whatever. And maybe they took the slot and said, we're going to turn it into something bigger. And we'll tack on a couple of Surface things at the end, which we'll get to. So that's a little bit of speculation, just kind of in the build up to this event.
You can't go to that venue less than a year in advance.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place too.
So if you think in terms of last September, they were planning a bunch of hardware and they were planning their usual Surface event. And ChatGPT hadn't shipped yet. Right?
So it's possible.
How would you know?
Yeah, they had a plan for this to be a bigger thing. Maybe we would have gotten the new laptop, the new, whatever. So we can only speculate. But yeah, that's just it. Richard knows more than any of us about the requirements for space for shows and all that stuff. So yes, that makes it makes total sense.
Yeah, they paint the picture of like, what would I be thinking about in September 22? Well, not large language models. Like that wasn't
that's really, true. That's absolutely
around,
true.
But they weren't important.
And it wasn't a Microsoft central strategy until November.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, not really until January, right? We got
okay, fair enough. But yes. So from Panos's perspective, with regards to the timing and all this, that kind of makes some sense. Pushed or jumped, we can debate. I think a little of both, maybe. I don't know. But yes, but it was very clear in the lead up to this event, once the invites went out, like this is about AI, regardless of whatever it might have been in the past, in this other future, it was an AI event. And it was very clear. It was clear from the products they mentioned before the event. And then of course, in the event, that it was what I would call like client side AI, not because the AI is necessarily running on the client all the time, but because it was more about AI products. And client-side products and services. So Bing and Edge, Windows 11, Microsoft 365. That was the extent of it, right? This was not Azure and developers and all kinds of other stuff. Before the show, given what the little that we knew, I had written something up about what I expected to see, and I wrote something very lengthy, and I will compress it to something very short, which was that I expected this thing to be, we're going to share a common back end for all our copilots, all the copilots we're talking about today. And Micah, well, actually, you guys were both not here necessarily for this part of it last week, but I had discussed Stevie Batish at Build 2023, but this past May, and a couple of things he said is the 3 ways they'll deliver AI, which is the big part of it. But he also specifically said that even though it's not branded this way, that Bing Chat is one of the copilots, right? So there's a copilot in Windows Copilot. There's a copilot in Bing/Edge, which is Bing Chat. And there is a copilot in Microsoft 365, Microsoft 365 Copilot. Commercial only at that time, right? That has shifted a little bit. So my belief was that we were going to go to the show and they were going to say same back end, same developer model, and we reached out to third parties, and here's some third-party stuff, right? So there's going to be a bunch of Microsoft products and services that are going to integrate into all these copilots across those platforms and third parties. And what we got was I was right there. So we got a Copilot rebranding. It is the same common core to all three, but now they're just calling it Microsoft Copilot or Copilot. So there's no such thing as Windows Copilot anymore. There's a product in Windows called Copilot, right? There's no such thing as Copilot inside Bing, but Bing Chat is based on Copilot. And then Microsoft 365 Copilot, because as Richard likes to say, naming is hard, is called Microsoft 365 Copilot because seriously, what the hell? But that's fine. That's fine. So I was right about the common back end. They decided to rebrand. Honestly, the rebranding thing was kind of the biggest news, which I think we can all admit is not much news. And there wasn't much in the way of Microsoft or third-party plug-in information that wasn't new. That was new. They did mention Adobe. So great.
Really? Because Adobe's got its own
right,
AI
but
stuff.
Adobe's also plugging into Google, right? They're plugging into Google. Is it Do It or Bard? I don't remember.
Oh, Google Bard, yeah.
They are plugging in, right? So and that makes sense. You got to be where the users are. You can't just be in your own stuff. So Adobe's doing the right thing, I think, for them. But I thought, from that perspective, I thought there was going to be just a lot more, you know?
Especially because, sorry to interrupt, but like ChatGPT has so many plugins already that you can use with its system. And
yes.
That's
so by the way, those plugins are common to the Microsoft thing. So the one thing, there was an open, well, I don't know how open it is. There's an open AI standard, I guess we'll call it, or an open standard for these plugins that will work across Microsoft Copilot and OpenAI.
Got it. So they just didn't demonstrate too many that were
they didn't talk about any of that
branded
stuff. No,
official. Got it.
I think they wanted to keep it a kind of a consumer marketing kind of event, right? So they didn't talk about developers. They didn't talk about plugins. Ignite's coming up in November. I think that's going to be the place for that. So I did expect more of that kind of thing. With regards to those products, Bing Chat is, it's actually called Bing Image Creator is picking up DALL-E 3 image creation capabilities, which is basically like going from a Warner Brothers cartoon to Pixar at quality level. It's like photographic quality, amazing. That stuff honestly was insane. I hadn't heard about that, and then a few days later, OpenAI started talking about DALL-E 3 as well. So this is something that's coming down the pike. Interesting. On the Windows side, we're going to get really deep in the Windows stuff because this is my weekly therapy. Is a combination of confusion and new features, some of which are AI based, some of which are not. And we can go through that. We should go through that stuff, but just from a high level first. Microsoft 365 Copilot. We already knew the commercial bit of that. They revealed there was a consumer one coming too, and got really vague on it. So, commercial version of Microsoft 365 Copilot launches in general availability November 1st. It's $30 per user per month. So it's a paid thing. It's expensive. Microsoft 365 consumer. Yeah, we're not talking about that. So It's in a very limited private preview now, invite only. And we heard from different people. We talked to people at the show from Microsoft 2024, and they don't want to talk about how or if they're going to monetize it.
In this video, we're going to learn how to pronounce.
Okay. So British guy. So we'll see on that, right? They have said explicitly they're not going to charge for AI capabilities in Bing. There'll be ads, right? They're not going to charge for AI capabilities in Windows, which is kind of interesting. And there have been reports since then. I don't have a link to any of this, I'm sorry, but there have been reports that Microsoft is using what I'll call a mini-me version of their AI in Windows. I
saw that.
to keep the cost down, right? Because the full model up in the cloud is just super expensive per transaction. And you're going to have a bunch of Windows users They just don't want to have a crazy bill for the next 3 months because people are screwing around with it. And Microsoft 365 consumer, we'll see. The expectation there for me is that they will charge for it in some way, either by raising the cost of the existing subscriptions or by adding a tier that adds the AI. So we'll see. I think we're going to have to pay for that.
So just to clarify, there's Windows Copilot on Windows 11, but then there's
hold on. Stop.
Okay.
There's no Windows Copilot anymore. This is the big news. So
that's right.
There's one Copilot. It's called Microsoft Copilot.
Yes.
It is a common Copilot across Bing and Edge because Bing's in it. Windows 11 and Microsoft 365 as well, right? So it's a common Copilot. Now, on each of those platforms, there are capabilities built on top that may not be present in the other ones, right? I think the chat, the Bing chat stuff is in Windows. The image creation stuff is or will be in Windows. Microsoft 365 Copilot in particular will have a really wide range of functionality that will be unique to the individual apps and to the services, and will vary greatly, I bet, between commercial and consumer, because commercial has the Microsoft graph and all of the internal Microsoft, corporate data that your company has. It's a very different situation. Microsoft 365 consumer, I would imagine, is going to be a little closer to what we see in Windows and Bing. Consumer stuff, broad internet, capabilities, just basic. And then maybe, I will have to speculate past that. I'm sure there'll be app-specific things that are common between commercial and consumer, because you need help in Word, whether you're using either one, right, to write a document.
Yeah.
So that's some of this is just educated guessing because they haven't said some of this explicitly. But the important thing that I took out of this was that my idea of a common core was correct, but they actually rebranded it. So that's the Copilot. That's just called Copilot.
If you had to guess, do you think that the Common Core Copilot that's coming to Windows 11 will not interact with, for example, Microsoft Word on Windows 11, but instead you'll have to use the Windows 365 Copilot to interact with Microsoft Word?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Great question, though.
Yeah, it is a great question. One of the problems, this is kind of like a sidebar to that, because you've reminded me of it, is we often talk about how many features Microsoft added to Microsoft Teams in particular over 2 years or whatever it was, 3 years. Microsoft 365 has added exponentially more features, and it's very, very complicated keeping up with what they add every month. It's actually calmed down recently, but for 2, 3, 5 years, I don't know, a long period of time, it was really hard to keep up with that every month. And if you really get granular on it, it's very frustrating to me. So, for example, I'll just give a simple example. I'll make it up. It doesn't matter. I don't remember when or how this happened, but at one point, Microsoft added a translation, an audio recording translation feature to Microsoft Word, asterisk, asterisk, because when they added it, they only added it to the version on the web. And it was like that for years. So if you had Word on the Mac, Word on Windows, Word on mobile, this feature was not in those products. It was only in the web product, which I think most people kind of don't use, right?
Right.
And I would argue that, I mean, there are different ways to do things, but if you're going to do something in a logical way where you have a plan to bring it to Windows and Mac and mobile, maybe depending on the feature, on some schedule, that's okay. But this happens with every single feature they release for every single thing that's part of Microsoft 365 over many years, where a feature will arrive for an app or service or product, whatever it is, on only one platform, and then may never appear anywhere else. Or will eventually appear somewhere else. It will only appear on one of the mobile platforms and not the other, or the reverse and not the other. And it's very confusing. And so the feature I just mentioned, it's possible actually by now it is in the desktop version, or I have to look, but it's hard to know. So when you ask, is the Microsoft Word AI thing going to be accessible through Windows? I say to myself, it should be, but I've been saying that for 5 years or whatever with Microsoft 365. So I hope so, right? Because you want to be able, I mean, those things should integrate, but
you almost think that they won't, because it'll help them differentiate. And if they are going to monetize the consumer version, right, then you almost want it to be.
The problem is I don't know if black sheep is still an acceptable term or whatever, but the outlier here is the Windows version of Copilot, because there's not a lot specific to Windows in this product. It's really lackluster. And it's a problem. Microsoft 365 Copilot nailed it. It's a ton of functionality. They have such a long runway. They're going to be adding new features to that thing for years, just like I described it for the Copilot stuff. It's going to be amazing. The Bing, chat stuff, same thing, really, right? There's all kinds of improvements you can make there. They just announced one with the image creation stuff I talked about. I think that thing also, with the Windows stuff, it's like, ugh, like there's 6 to 8 commands, that are specific to Windows.
But then you've got the Windows apps, right? You've got the
yes, that's true. That is true.
Those are sort of AI enabled. But
nope, that's true.
I've always argued that the Windows play is the ecosystem. That's why the Adobe thing keeps coming up, because if Adobe comes to play and does the Stevie Batish plan of inside and beside and so forth, the rest of the ecosystem will come along. And the idea that this is that you'll now describe a task and the tool will help you select the software to execute it. There's a huge first mover benefit to that.
That's right. And it, so far, I would say the way they've discussed this is that productivity tasks, hello AI, I would like to do something. You typically think about that in the context of Microsoft 365. But then again, Microsoft 365, it's not a closed ecosystem, but it is an ecosystem, and Microsoft's going to build it for their own stuff. And it's because this is an extensible model. Of course, Adobe could become part of that. But then again, you have some arbitrary set of applications installed on your computer, and you ask Windows now, hey, I need to do this project. This is what I need to do. And it's like, okay. And it's like, and if all those things are plugged in through Windows, right, then it should be able to grab things from whatever apps, no matter where they're from, right? And depending on what you have. And so, I would say Windows is the obvious integration point for a lot of people.
Well, it's the broadest one. Yes. The question is, Microsoft more interested in the broad ecosystem or in selling their own product? And I think if I was on the Windows team, where
Cory Doctorow would tell you
that. If I'm on the Windows team, I've lost relevance, right? I'm no longer the focus of the company anymore. M365 makes more money. This is my play. This is my.
This is the chance to step back into the spotlight. That's right.
Yeah, and to rally a bunch of companies around you, like that's really interesting, right?
And
suddenly that's relevant again. Like, what if an operating system actually mattered because it had a role to play in facilitating work?
So you just reminded me. So we talked about Panos Panay leaving Microsoft, right? So one of the interesting side effects of that is that he was in charge of Windows and Surface broadly. Microsoft put out a statement explaining what was going to happen, and it was very confusing. In fact, it was so confusing that everybody who writes about this stuff, except for Mary Jo Foley, apparently, got this wrong, right? And now, when I read this statement, I'm looking at it now because I need to understand this. I got it wrong too, by the way. And I can see why, because it was poorly written, right? It made it sound like they were splitting Panos Panay's responsibility between multiple people. And you can look at that as positive or negative, like this guy was so good, he could do it all. Or maybe there was a strategy change, right? Maybe this AI thing came along and they were like, man, we need to focus on this. And the individual product things don't matter as much. And I don't know, it's speculation, frankly, but educated guess based on what I'm reading here, based on what I know about Microsoft, is that Windows as a product group was sort of demoted in the ranks a bit, and this thing was put in on top of it, right? So we have more personal computing, which is a literal business unit at Microsoft. I think those are going to change. I think there's going to be a reorg. But there's a team now that's going to build silicon hardware, like chipsets and probably hardware. Systems, yeah, there's a hardware, sorry. And devices, those are all the same thing. Anyway, that span Windows, client, and cloud for an AI world. And this team has a bunch of people from Surface in it, right? People we know, Stephen Patish, Ralph Groen, right? Nice. This team is going to report to the person who is directly responsible for more personal computing, which was the guy who was the person before Panos Panay, which is Rajesh Jar. That's not his actual title, but he's basically in charge of all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's one team. And then you've got this other team that's sort of like they've had experienced teams like this before. Joe Belfiore was the big person you would think of in terms of this kind of stuff. But this other team is going to build experiences that blend web services and Windows for an AI world. And as people I've never heard of in this far, they will directly report to a person I've never heard of. And it's going to be called the Windows and Web Experience Team. Okay. But then there's Yusuf Mehdi, right? Now, this is the guy, he's been at Microsoft since the 90s. I first met him in 1998 when I went to the NT 5.0 technical workshop. That product became Windows 2000. I asked him where Dave Cutler was, and he told me he was working on 64-bit stuff, in his words. And he has bounced around the company over the years. I can't believe he's still there, but he went to Bing, MSN, Windows Live over the years, Xbox for a long time. Bing, most recently, he was the guy that led the public presentation of the Bing chat stuff back in February. He is taking on the responsibility of leading Windows and Surface businesses with our OEM and retail partners. Now, a lot of people read that and said, oh, Yusuf Mehdi is taking over Panos Panay's job. That's not true. He's a marketing guy. He is actually going to be responsible for a team that works across Windows and Surface with Microsoft's PC Maker and retail partners. These are the places that sell PCs to customers, right? He's not in charge of Windows and Surface. And by the way, everyone can do this for yourselves. Go back and watch that presentation and watch what he says in the very beginning when he introduces his boss, the guy who runs Windows and Surface. like there's a part where he actually says that. And I wonder if they didn't do that on purpose because this thing was
wow.
Was quite vague. So anyway, I think Microsoft, no, I don't think. Microsoft is clearly pivoting on AI. I think their corporate structure is going to show that soon. I think that little thing I just read through, which I know is brutal to listen to in audio, but if you read it and you kind of look at it, you might see the beginnings of a new corporate structure, or at least part of it for the company. I think these three major business units they have right now are not how this thing should be and will be structured very shortly. So we'll see how that goes. But that's my guess. And I think what we saw was literally the kind of consumer / client side focus of AI. What does this look like for people, right? Mm-hmm. And it is those products. I mean, it's Bing, it's Edge, it's Windows, it's Microsoft 365, commercial and consumer. So that's what we saw. Oh, and I should say it's also Surface, right? Because Microsoft does sell Surface PCs. Still, they sell fewer of them than they used to. That's an interesting little thing that's happening here. They got rid of most of the weird ones and the non-essential things like headphones and stuff. And they announced 2 PCs in the live stream, or in the non-live stream, I guess, that you guys saw. And then 2 more Surface devices, one of which is a PC separately, which I thought was kind of weird, but okay, whatever. Only one of those PCs matters. It's the one Richard's been waiting for. It's the Surface Studio Laptop 2. This ties into an AI story we have later in the show, so I'll just blow through that right now, actually. This thing comes with a 13th gen, I think it's H series, but whatever series it is, mobile processor. This is a mobile generation processor. With the 13th gen chips, Intel provides an add-on NPU that you can put on the motherboard only on desktop, right? So as of today, the current generation of Intel chipsets, core chipsets, is 13th. There are mobile and desktop variants. The desktop variant none of them have an integrated NPU. They will. That's the 14th gen. But with the 13th gen desktop, you could actually buy, I don't know anyone that sells this, but you could make a motherboard that has a socket for it and add the NPU to it. And you could have your NPU. not on mobile. But this thing is on mobile, and it does have an NPU. What the hell's going on? Well, Intel for Microsoft only apparently is doing exactly what I just described. They allowed them to make a motherboard that accepts the NPU socket, and they're putting the socket on the board, and that thing ships with an NPU. I believe it is the only and will be the only 13th gen laptop ever to have that capability. Very interesting, right? So at least they have something to announce. Right before the show, I'll just blow through something that was, coming up later. Intel announced Meteor Lake, the 14th gen of these chipsets, that as per their schedule for many, many years, they announced in the fall, usually around IFA, which was earlier this month, for desktop. And they start selling those desktop systems in time for the holidays. Then in January, they announced the mobile version, and they start selling those products in February, March, et cetera, right? Those products were all expected to have this integrated NPU, or what I think Intel might call the AI engine, right? Integrated into the SoC. So it's not a separate chip anymore. It's everyone gets it. You can't, as a PC maker, not get it. You're all getting it.
The same way math processors just became part of the chip.
Yeah. And so when they announced it, I was like, oh, that's kind of curious. It's a little off schedule, but maybe because of the Microsoft event, something, I don't know. But here's what I missed, because this is on me. I didn't look into this too deeply because I'm waiting for January. That's the thing that's important to me. I'm not buying a desktop PC. Who cares? That is not what they announced. This year, for the first time, with Meteor Lake, they announced the mobile generation of chips. That's what they announced.
Really?
That is what's coming out. So they are shipping these before the end of the year. They're not shipping them in January. They're doing it now. The desktop version is what's coming next year. They have never done that.
So they swapped it.
In recent memory. Yep, they swapped them around. And I think, honestly, I don't know why they don't. I mean, they should always do. They should ship they should do this in August and ship the mobile thing so we have back to school and holiday, right? I mean,
I wonder if you're literally just looking at the legacy of once upon a time you sold desktops first, laptops were an afterthought.
That's right. Yeah,
it hasn't been true for years, but they were only just finally recognizing switch this up.
Yeah,
I don't want to drag this out. I'm so sorry, but I am a huge. I'm so intrigued by things that are traditions where you just do things and you don't even know why. And if you press someone on why they're doing it, they can't answer the question.
They don't even know.
I bore the hell out of my wife every morning when we walk. And I brought this topic up today, and she told me a story, which was something she had read, where this woman always cut the end of a ham off before cooking it. And so someone said, why do you do that? She said, I don't know. My mother did it this way. So they went to the mother and said, why do you do that? And she said, oh, I don't even know. My mother did it this way. So they went to the great-grandmother, still alive. They said, how come you did this? And she said, I had this really small pan. It's the only way I could fit the ham in the pan.
Yes.
So everybody for generations just kept doing this without any understanding of what the purpose of it. And yes, to Richard's point about Intel, and I mean, we as people, human beings or whatever, I think we get stuck. We've always done it this way.
Well, and plus you're also in a credible fast cadence. Moving deadlines around is not a trivial thing, right?
Yeah.
The broader picture of what's the logical order, what will have the best impact on sales, just doesn't come up compared to, I haven't got time to think about this. I got to get working on the next gen.
Right. Nobody wants to do the thing where they, and this, we'll just pretend it's Intel, the only thing that matters here. But, no one in Intel wants to be the guy that says, hey, I have an idea. Well, you're right. We should switch that schedule. And what I'll do is I'll take the bullet and I won't release a product for 18 months.
Right.
No one's going to say that.
No one wants to do that.
No one's like, no.
Be the person who suggests that in the first place. And then they're like, why? What do you, what?
And that probably contributes to
all of that. Yeah.
I mean, so nobody wants to do it. So, all right. So there's the event, right? So we had Copilot across Bing, Edge, Windows, Microsoft 365, added the consumer piece, fun, very vague. And then one Surface PC with an NPU. Okay, cool. We know we're going to get more of those next year. So that was the event. It was a crisp hour. We're going to talk about Windows a lot. But I don't want to get into the schedule stuff because that's the drama that's coming up. But I will say there are a lot of new. They described this update, which they've now shipped right in preview form. So yesterday was week D of September. So it was the day Microsoft ships their preview update. Yusuf Mehdi promised this would be the biggest update they've ever delivered for Windows 11. That is absolutely accurate. A lot of new features. So Copilot in beta, the Windows backup app, AI powered, well, that's not, who cares about that. The start of the new File Explorer, right? The buggy, slow new version, which is horrible. Volume mixer, passkey support, which frankly should have gotten more press. A lot of changes to settings, Windows 365 integration, right? Where you could log into your computer or log into Windows 365 and go right to it. Kind of cool. And then quick switch between cloud PC and local PC. Oh, there's some new stuff they never discussed or tested anywhere. Instant game support in the Microsoft Store.
I remember when you would see all these things in the Insider program before the gamer. Like, where were they building this? Why did we never see it in the Insider stream?
I'm going to do my best to, without laughing or choking on myself, to explain to you how people at that show from Microsoft explained this to me, because I asked this question. We asked multiple people this question. And it basically boiled down to that continuous innovation nonsense they're talking about. We just keep looking at it. There are so many different ways to provide value to Windows customers. We're just always, they basically try every way imaginable, right? They're being responsive, Richard. They're not being irresponsible. I don't know.
We never had time to put it into the Insider pipeline. We built it so fast.
Exactly. I mean, you don't want why would you want to hurt users and make them wait? We just want to get it out in the world, Yeah. Anyway, there's a bunch of AI enhancements coming to apps, including Paint. So today we got a feature they never tested the Insider program called Paint Code Creator. It went live today.
What?
There's
there has to be another channel somewhere.
Yeah, there's a secret channel. Yes, somebody has access to the Easter egg channel. It's called. And
what do you call it? Clip Champ. My favorite app is getting an automated capability that they never tested. There's AI enhanced tools in Snipping Tool, which they actually did say, and I don't know if they ever tested it, but that will do OCR basically on an image with text on it, that kind of thing.
Okay, I have a thought. So you mentioned how you felt like this was more a consumer marketing event than before.
Yep.
Sure, they can say that they're doing it for this and that, but isn't it nice that they can save all of these arguably fun features so that the journalists who are trying this stuff early, who report on it, aren't able to reveal these fun new features? Because I look at the Paint Co-Creator and I'm like, oh, that's pretty exciting. And so since you all didn't get to try it in Insider and talk about it ahead of time, now it's just brand new and people can be excited about it.
No, that's fine. But then I would say to you, that's great. Announce it in September and release it in November, and then you get your little announcement and we have time to test it. Here's my I keep guessing. I have to guess. I keep saying this is speculation, but it's very clear that Microsoft has turned on a dime over the past year with AI. I think what maybe people don't understand quite yet is they turned on a dime several times. Okay. And what I mean by that is AI is going to be the focus of the company. And it's like, no, seriously, AI is going to be the focus of your part of the company. Figure it out. And so all these parts of the company were like, okay, what can we do for AI? And then with this event in particular, they're like, look, we got this slot. We're doing a consumer thing. Figure it out. They really jiggered around with the Windows release schedule, which we're going to get to soon, to make this all come together in the way that it did. And I think what they were doing was this stuff just came in hot and we're going to throw it out in the world because we want to have something to announce. We want people to believe this is a big thing. And then there's the nefarious thing I will get to, which is the real reason. But they are desperate for people inside of Microsoft, groups inside of Microsoft, to come forward with something that shows off.
This reminds me of the Internet Tidal Wave, right?
Yes,
of when Gates put out the letter and said, oh no, it's about the Internet. Every team has to deliver something. And that's why to this day, SQL Server can output HTML. I'm not saying everything they built was a good idea, but they all had to do it. And
that's
so
exactly right.
There's a map reduce function happening here. In January, for the first time ever, Satya Nadella made that level of proclamation to the organization, and the whole organization exploded. They all went in different directions to experiment. And now the reduce function's happening as they're trying to bring it together,
make it real,
some kind of plan.
And by the way, one of those things is this Copilot rebranding. This is how fast Microsoft moved this year. At the beginning of the year, at some point, maybe November, who cares? They said internally to everybody, hey, our stuff is going to be called Copilot. except for that first thing we're putting out, but don't worry about that. Everything's going to be called a Copilot. Figure it out. So Microsoft 365 said, all right, we'll make a Microsoft 365 Copilot. Windows said, okay, we'll make a Windows Copilot. And then it's only a few months later that internally they're like, you know what? Actually, forget those things we did. It is going to be a Copilot. It's going to be one Copilot. We're changing the branding again. They announced the branding in May and then killed it in September. That's quick. I mean, for a company like Microsoft, this is a battleship. Moving that thing like that, it's kind of incredible. And I know most people are like, oh, rebranding, who cares? No, this is big. Because this really sets the stage for this as a platform for this is the next wave. This is the next wave. This is the next decade or whatever. You know, we're going to see, at least over the next 2-3 years, an unbelievable tsunami of new features based on AI that are going to land across this ecosystem. And it is very important that they get that right. And they could have gone to market. The old Microsoft 5 years ago would have gone to market with all these stupid other brands. And they're like, no, we're going to rein this thing in. It's Copilot. Deal with it. And I know we announced it. Don't care. Fix it. We're just going to start calling it the new thing.
Yeah. The question is, are they going to ease off on the wiggling the wheel?
Right.
Like,
yep.
We can only take so many whiplashes, and so can the team. I think as I listened to you describe all these pieces, like, gee, I wonder how much of an obstacle Panos was.
Yeah,
like,
I think
a situation where he was not on board with all of this, and it was messing with his plan.
Okay,
and he was shunted aside, like being pushed to the second day keynote.
He was. Well, I mentioned Windows down a level, right? That meant he was down a level because Surface was never at any level, and he was on the SLT, the senior leadership team at Microsoft. Windows gets knocked down a level, right? That looks like a demotion. It's not. It's not fair to him, but it looks like a demotion to the outside world. Is he on the SLT anymore? Honestly, why would he be? You want the guys above him doing the AI stuff on that team, not him. And I think that played a role. That, again, speculation. I want to be clear, 100% speculation. Pushed or jumped, I think that played a role for him because he was very aggressively career-oriented, success-oriented, publicity-oriented. This guy who could not speak publicly would not stop speaking publicly, would never let anyone take his place. And he never got any better. That last
I think the pressure was on him, and he found a home.
Whoa, quote, he never got any better, unquote.
He didn't. That's the thing. Terry Myerson, when he took over for Windows, was a horrible speaker. Horrible. But by the time he was out of there, he was pretty good at it because Microsoft has an incredible system for training people in public speaking internally. This is important. You can't get up as an executive, a leader of a business, and screw up. You have to be good at this. He was never good at it. He wasn't good on day one, and he was not good when he left. In fact, like I said, his last appearance at Build was his worst ever. He was unhinged.
Well, that was crazy.
It was
off script.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
That guy who does Surface now, he came out, spoke eloquently, concisely. I love him immediately. I walked up to him and introduced myself. It's like, I'm so happy to meet you.
And admittedly, he was on script, right? Like,
oh yeah, yep.
There's a handful of Microsoft leaders that can speak off script.
Yes.
I mean, Guthrie does this brilliantly. He doesn't do it very often these days, but he invented Unplugged. Right?
A lot of people didn't like this guy, but Stephen Elop was like that, and I loved him. And that was true when he was at Nokia. It was true when he came back to Microsoft as part of the Windows Phone stuff. He would just stand there and talk about. He knew everything about every single one of those products. And you have to remember, it's a dozen phones. They all vary by some tiny little changes. And he was like, and no problem.
Balmer was good at that too, right? Like, but these were guys who deeply knew their stuff, and they would do this unplugged effect, this sort of lean back on the counter. What do you want to talk about? Let's go.
Just throw it at me. I can answer anything. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And those guys are rare, and they should be celebrated. But Panos was not one of those guys, and I don't mean he should be vilified.
And I don't expect anybody to be good off the cuff. Like, that's its own skill. Mm-hmm. And Microsoft's great at writing really good scripts and train the snot out of you to be on time, exactly to
hit your marks.
Do you think he thought he was?
Marketing message.
Do you think he thought he was?
Yeah, I do. And I do because I know there are people out there to this day who think he was fantastic.
Because I definitely didn't get the vibe.
The historical record shows otherwise.
Yeah, he certainly led with confidence, even if it wasn't informative. But yeah, and my few presentations that I saw him do, he always seemed confident in what he was saying.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, no, everyone comes away with these different reads on him. I didn't like his style at all personally, but I've already beaten that to death. So I I think we're going to learn more over time. I said this last week, but as of now, I still think it's this combination of factors. The thing I said about him losing prestige and power, I think makes sense. Obviously, I said it. I think it makes sense. But I mean, knowing what I know, that makes sense to me. And we'll see. But and we'll also see how these internal machinations play out, and if there is a reorg, like I suggested there might be, or we'll have to wait and see. But Microsoft, the point here though is that Microsoft in a very short period of time unleashed an unbelievable amount of software here. And it's an interesting reminder that this company is capable of that, because honestly, the Windows team has been walking around like the Three Stooges for the past year, bumping into walls and smacking each other on the head. They have no idea what they're doing. And there's still plenty of that going on. We're going to talk about that at length, believe me. But
there are plenty of times we felt like Microsoft was not capable of that. It's interesting to see this version of Microsoft being this
still being possible. That should make us all very happy. And I got to say, look, for all of the, I don't know where I put this in the notes. Maybe it's here. No, it's later. But for all of the, kind of terribleness that is true of Windows 11 and how they did it and how the functional regressions and all the nonsense. Here we are, 2 years later.
An omission has appeared. Right, like that's the whole.
It is a matter of circumstance that you now have a motivation to be better, but the leadership is gone, and maybe that has something to do. Look, we can speculate, but as a Windows enthusiast, right, and I literally I'm closing next year's 30 years for me of this, and it is nice to have Windows back, because Micah, even in your occasional interactions with me, you've seen how frustrating it can be to deal with this team that doesn't seem to know what they're doing, have any direction, doesn't care about details, and I'm not saying any of that's going to change, but all of a sudden there is this thing. And so now there's a lot to talk about, and that is wonderful for me. And I think it should be wonderful for anyone who cares about Windows at all. It's just wonderful. Like there's really good things happening here. So we're going to get into some of the dirt, the drama. Don't worry. I'm still that person. But there is a whole list of wonderfulness that is occurring with Windows right now. And I know some people are Copilot is bloat. I don't care. I'm not going to use it. That's great. You can turn it off.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
All right. I think we should take a quick break while we all try to reckon with this idea that the era of a smiling Paul is upon us.
Don't get crazy. Oh my God, that's a little crazy.
Oh, okay. Sorry. A grinning Paul.
Hold the hand over the pause button, but you will see.
Let me tell you about our first sponsor this week. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by our pals at IT Pro TV, which is now called ACI Learning. IT teams significantly benefit from training from ACI Learning. They kept all the fun and the personality of IT Pro TV, but now they've amplified this with robust solutions for all your training needs. You can let your team be entertained while they train with short format content and more than 7,200 hours to choose from. Plus, it's on demand, which allows teams to train when they want to. You already know the name IT Pro TV from our network. We've talked so much about them in the past, and now as a part of ACI Learning, IT Pro's expanded capabilities provide more support for IT teams by keeping their courses updated in all aspects, including MS Cloud, AWS, CompTIA, and so much more. One proud tech team leader said, quote, "I had 110 engineers in the field, and we had dozens of IT Pro accounts. Last year alone, they passed over 40 certs. ACI Learning's over 80% completion rate is 50% higher than the industry average. Teams love practice labs where they can test and experiment before deploying new apps or updates without compromising that live system. So something goes wrong, you can just close out of the browser and start over fresh without worrying about messing up a live system. ACI's practice tests allow professionals to prepare for challenging certification examinations with practice questions. You can retake these tests as much as you need to ensure you're ready before sitting for the exam. ACI Learning's new skills gap analysis tool called Insights is powered by the magic of AI to identify your team's weaknesses, provide management and individuals with valuable assessments, and assist in professional development planning. You can identify skills gaps, empower your team, and personalize your training to protect your business. IT Pro TV, which is now ACI Learning, keeps your business from risking redundancy by consistently offering the most up-to-date certifications and courses available, provides you with a personal account manager to make sure you aren't wasting anyone's time. Your account manager will work with you to ensure your team only focuses on the skills that matter to your organization so that you can leave redundant training behind, and holds ISO certification so you know you're receiving the world-class training your team deserves. Keep your IT team up with the speed of technology. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit. Twit listeners receive a free trial and up to 65% off an IT Pro Enterprise Solution plan. Now, the discount is based on the size of your team, and when you fill out their form, you will receive a proper quote tailored to your needs. That's go.acilearning.com/twit. And we thank ACI Learning and IT Pro for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly. All right, we are back from the break. I am Micah Sargent, subbing in for Leo Laporte, who is hanging out with the Green Bay Packers, or near them or something. He's not here. He'll be back. I am here, and I am joined with your Windows pals. It's Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. How's it going?
Well, I've taken a few pills. I think I'm going to be okay.
Good.
Look, I know this whole thing bothers you, the craziness around Windows 11 updates, but
yeah,
under the circumstances, this is unavoidable. Right? Like the fact that there's been a complete sea change in what's important in Windows in the past few months. Of course, the updates.
Yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, the problem is this has been going on since Windows 11 arrived. I mean, it's from the very get-go.
But I think originally it was neglect. Like it seemed like there were a couple of intern teams going. Like there was a few different folks who were updating stuff. What's interesting now? I mean, back in the Gates days, we used to. I'd hear people they talked about the Eye of Sauron. Like if Gates was paying attention.
Would you please stop paying attention to us? Exactly.
Yes, it was kind of terrifying. Suddenly, there's a new Eye of Sauron, and it's on this team, and so everything's. I mean,
it's probably on every team, honestly. But yeah, Windows. I sort of wrote something to this effect. It's when it shot back Windows into the spotlight. It's not the only thing in the spotlight, right? But they've not been in the spotlight to this degree. I don't think since Windows 8. Yeah, frankly.
Wow. Yeah.
And of course that didn't go well, but
but you had a force of personality that was part of that was largely wagging the whole company, and that's changed.
Yeah. Okay. People forget this, but the Titanic launch was fantastic. The rest of the thing didn't go so well. But you kind of lose track of the beginning. It was majestic.
It was a beautiful ship. But okay, I have a point of clarification, because earlier you were talking, and I believe, Richard, you said that Windows is not, the team is, looking at Copilot maybe as a way to be in the spotlight again, because 365 is where all the attention is. But now there's the suggestion that Windows 11 has the Eye of Sauron on it again. So you're talking about external versus internal attention whenever you mentioned that earlier?
It's all internal.
Okay.
All internal.
And that's the issue, is that as they've been trying to be a cloud company, which was the right thing to do, and one would argue when they pivoted towards cloud, there needed to be the same kind of powerful statements as we will all focus on cloud. And it wasn't really.
It was hard for Windows, right? I mean, Microsoft 365, which was Office 365, which was Office, is the poster child for taking a traditional software business and turning it into a subscription-based cloud service. And they were hugely successful, Windows Server did the same thing with Azure, right?
Right.
And then, Xbox is doing this right now. This is the big part of their strategy. The next console, part of that big leak, is this hybrid cloud console and cloud gaming, of course, through Xbox Cloud Gaming. So what about Windows? It's like, what about Windows? Windows is like left alone in the corner. Like, what about us? Like, we used to be wicked important.
Well, that was the problem with the cloud plays. The alternative to the cloud play was the Windows play. And so the Windows had to be a loser.
It had to, exactly, be de-emphasized, because look, The reason Microsoft is the second biggest company in the world by market cap today is because of all of the Wall Street excitement over every single time they talked about cloud, Azure growth, whatever it was. This predates Nadella, but let's just call it the Nadella era, is marked by this rapid expansion of their stock price and their value. And a lot of it was just smoke and mirrors. It was not fake it until you make it, but talk about it until you make it, because they were always going to do it. This isn't fake. It's not Elizabeth Holmes. But I mean, they were always going to get there. But they talked this thing up for so long that by the time this thing was a serious business and growth had slowed, because of course it can't go on forever. Apple's doing it too.
Double-digit growth forever.
All of a sudden, now you're like, see, we did it. And Wall Street's like, you're getting kind of boring. I mean, you got to have the next thing. And God help them, this thing fell right in their lap literally fell in their lap. And
every team has a role, unlike the cloud.
That's right. AI will lift Windows in a way that cloud did not. And so suddenly they're back and they have a role and they're going to fight, I think. This is, again, we're speculating a little bit, but Mike asked a very pertinent question there. Where will those integrations come? Obviously, it will come in Microsoft 365, but Windows can make a really good case. It should come there too. And I agree with that. I mean, I don't know.
And having these two teams, I'm not going to say fight for this, but both push this way, there's no downside for Microsoft.
No. And it's common back end and, Yep. No, this is great. This is great. I mean, look, objectively, honestly, the thing about Microsoft 365 compared to Windows is that it's a superset as far as audience goes, right? Even back in the day, Office had a bigger audience than just Windows because not everyone was on Windows, right? And that's even more true today because of mobile. So Microsoft 365 could make a great case. I don't know what the numbers are, but the potential addressable market for this product is much bigger on Microsoft 365 because it spans everything than web, mobile devices, other platforms, and Windows. And Windows is Windows, right? I mean, so there is that natural advantage they have, and they're already got a leg up because they've been doing the cloud stuff for a long time. But whatever, you know what? It's a new world. And I can assure you that adding AI background removable in Paint is not going to beat Microsoft 365 or scare them in any way, shape, or form. But I like to see them trying. It's cute.
But if all the best products in the out in the field all applied to this interface, to allow these large language models to interact with their software, you could have something superior.
Yep.
Effectively, you have the M365 play is then the walled garden play, all the apps from the same place, all the teams sitting in the same room kind of effect.
Yes.
And then you have the open ecosystem play.
Look, the very fact that there's been a directive from on high, which they have telegraphed now publicly through this Copilot announcement, guys, this is going to be a common back end. It's going to be the same for all of you. You are going to work together. This isn't Windows 8 doing their own app platform that's sort of like the Windows Phone platform. It's like, no, you are going to work together. That was exactly the kind of leadership, frankly, that group needed and didn't get from up high. They did their own path, and they screwed the pooch forever on that one. And that, we all know how that ended up. So it's over. Anyway, so yes, I would just say, so Richard.
I preamble this whole preamble is to say the updates aren't that bad, Paul.
The updates themselves are not that bad. I'll tell you what, I will cut to the chase here. I just want to preface this by saying, I don't remember exactly when Richard joined, probably last November-ish, something like that.
I was flirting with you guys over, towards Christmas. We only got to commit in January.
So you have gotten the luck or damning of having to be here to watch me in real time cope with them changing the way they update Windows every single month for the past year. So unfortunately, you have been, party to that, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to turn this into a group therapy session, but that's the way it's worked out for me. I'm in a good place for that because I have worked with so many of these teams, and I've had these experiences where it's like, hey, I remember I mentioned to you the one time, it's like, this feels like a group of interns. Like, that happens. Oh yeah. And then you find out, oh God, it is. I was talking to Richard before the show, and everyone's different, right? And Richard has a very positive kind of outlook, which I frankly am very jealous of. I mean, I wish I was like that. And I have a hard time, doing that. So I'm going to try to do that, but not today. So I guess I'll just kind of, I'll summarize this concisely for a change. And I'll just say, remember that this year, every month, basically from January through August, it was like, what are they doing? It's a little different. They finally not consolidated. They finally settled on the week D schedule I just mentioned, right? The preview updates used to go out in week C, who cares? But now they're week D. And week D kind of makes sense because it's right between each week B. Cool. That's when the preview updates go. We're going to get new features almost every month. And we did. I would say from January to this month, the only month we didn't get a new feature, if I'm not mistaken, was August, I think. Actually, also January because they weren't working in December. So actually it was February through till now, only 1 month. Sometimes it was one feature. I think it was July. We got one feature, nothing major. One time we got a little slider switch in Windows settings. Sometimes we got a bunch of features. Every quarter we got these moment updates, right? Moment updates are a collection of new features, all released at one time. This thing that we got yesterday in preview form is Moment 4. And by the time August rolled around, actually, I guess it was July, Microsoft, remember, had released that white paper and said, this is how we update Windows. And Richard correctly just jumped right on the fact, did you notice this is a 1.0 document? Yeah, they just made it up. They've been updating Windows and updating the way they update Windows since July 2015, technically January 2015, and they just now figured it out. Literally, this is how this has gone down. So that's been my life the past several years. And I hoped, with the release of this white paper, it's out there, it's public. Maybe they're not going to screw around with it anymore. And you know what? They've screwed around with it. And I will just say that I have been saying for a while now that Moment 4 for Windows 11 22H2 and Windows 11 23H2 are the same thing, right? That this is what's coming up. They're going to release the preview version in September and the public non-avoidable version in October. And then it's Microsoft, so November, December, January, we're going to get updates, right? Especially on File Explorer, which is coming in hot, really buggy, performance issues, et cetera. And that is, again, I'm trying to cut to the chase here, but July, August, whenever they announced it, Microsoft also told us they were going to release Windows 11 23H2 as an enablement package. And that should have been the clue. Because an enablement package is a very small thing. You do have to reboot, but it's nothing. It comes right back. And it basically flips the switch internally. And what has happened is that in the background over the past month or two, they've actually been loading new features onto your computer. And the enablement package does what it says. It turns them on. And you know what? That doesn't make any sense because we were talking about this in August. This thing it wasn't ready. And then September came. We're like, this thing isn't ready. When are they going to do? What's going on here? And what's going on here, and this is thanks to Zach Bowden at Windows Central. He reached out to some of his sources at Microsoft and said, what is this thing? You just announced this update at this event, and it's not 23H2. You're saying that 23H2 is now going to come a little later in the year, and that on the schedule that by all rights is the 23H2 schedule, you're releasing this other CU, cumulative update, monthly update. First in preview form yesterday, and then in final form in 2 weeks. Not final, you know what I'm saying, public form. That is something else. It has a bunch of different names. Its names are legion. It doesn't matter. It's the September 2023 Windows 11 update. It's Beelzebub, whatever you want to call it. And it is almost literally every single thing that was going to be in 23H2. And then you're going to release 23H2 in a month or two. So why? And here's the reason. Microsoft turned on a dime with AI. Remember I said they turned on a bunch of dimes? Here's another one of the dimes. They changed it. And the reason is those moment updates, those cumulative updates, those are mandatory. You have to take it. If you're on Windows 11 22H2, you're getting it. You cannot avoid it. And they want everyone to have this. If they put this out as 23H2, people would say no. And that's not what Microsoft wants. They are literally forcing this thing down our throats by making it the biggest ever update to Windows 11 is not a new version of Windows 11. It's a random September update that for some reason, but not for some reason, right? For a reason, Microsoft's reason, everyone's getting it. And then 2 months are going to go by. So 1 month goes by, not really 1 month, but the next month comes, the public version hits, and then one more month goes by, maybe two, we'll see. But probably in November, they're going to ship 23H2. And 23H2 is an enablement package that changes the version number and adds one more new feature. That's all it is. It literally is everything that it was, plus, well, it's everything that it was minus one new feature was just released yesterday in preview form. That's it. Windows Copilot will be in preview in 23H2. It's not going to be like finalized or anything like that. It will be in preview probably for a long time, frankly, right? Because it's not really there. And that's the kind of, to get to what I just said, I wrote 3 enormous articles because I was trying over a period of time, starting the day of the event, stretching into the next weekend and going into the following Monday, to understand what the heck are they doing at this late stage of the game. And it is what I just said. There's no doubt about it that his sources at Microsoft have told him exactly the reason. It makes sense. It is happening. We're all getting it. And then 23H2 will be nothing. It's just, it'll be the thing that switches the version number in the about box that no one even knows still exists in Windows. And then one icon will change on your taskbar, and that's going to be it. So the schedule for everybody, just the actual schedule is this. Microsoft yesterday released the fall update, the September 2023 Windows update, whatever you want to call it, as part of, it's not Patch Tuesday, as part of the weekday Tuesday release, right? So it's preview form. You have to go get it. You're not going to get it automatically. In 2 weeks, on Patch Tuesday in October, I think it's October 10th, off the top of my head, is the day that it will be mandatory. Everyone's getting it. There's no waiting for it. There's no staggered release schedule or whatever, although some features will be staggered because, Microsoft. And then over the next month or whatever after that, they'll stagger release some of the features. And then either in November or December, they'll just release something called 23H2, which will be kind of a non-event unless they add stuff to it in the meantime. But right now, the only difference is that by default, Windows 11 has a button on the taskbar for chat, which is actually like an interesting front end to the consumer version of Teams. In Windows 10, this feature was called Meet Now, and it was a front end to Skype, right? So in other words, when you click on it, the app doesn't run. You actually get this other UI. And I got to tell you something, it's too bad because that little front end UI was really nice. It's actually a neat little app, or front end. It's not a full app. You could get to the full consumer Teams app from it. No one ever did because no one ever ran this thing, right? So I think what happened is people clicked on it and they're like, no thanks. And no one ever ran it. And so after 2 years of that, they decided to replace that icon with the Copilot icon, right? Which is the new default icon. And there will be a pinned Microsoft, they're now calling the consumer version Microsoft Teams -free, which is the consumer version of Teams now. And the expectation to date has been that this will run that app instead of running this front end experience, except for one little thing. It's Microsoft. Just yesterday, they released a release preview build that has this feature in it. And there is, in fact, a new front end. They're still working on it. So even though it's an app UI, or an app icon, sorry, it will still launch some kind of weird front end instead of the full app by default. Anyway, so I talk schedule. So the other part of the schedule is the Windows Insider program, right? So for the past, month or two, the beta channel has been testing 23H2. I think they still are. They've never said, so we don't know. But the release preview. Is there
another channel we don't know about that has these other products in it?
Oh man! Oh, like
a secret channel.
There could be. Actually, let me get back to that because that's an interesting point. The fall update, or what used to be 23H2, moved into the release preview channel. I think it was Friday last week, and then yesterday, I think, or the other day, it got a new build that has this new Teams thing in it, meaning that is now on 23H2. Okay, so. You asked about a different hidden channel or something. The beta channel, if I'm not mistaken, is the channel in the Windows Insider program that actually releases 2 builds each week. Each time there's a drop, not one build. And there's one build that has new features enabled and one build that does not. And that's an enablement package switch. It's the way they've been testing, the way they're going to deliver 23H2, right? And also, by the way, it's something they've been doing with Windows 10 for a while now, because we don't talk about Windows 10 that much, but when Windows 10 got boring and they slowed down development and there weren't a bunch of new features, They used to do this system where the H2 release would be the big one, relatively speaking, and then the H1 release that would follow 6 months later would be the small update. Those small updates for the past several versions have all been enablement packages because they're not resetting the compatibility clock or the support clock or anything like that. So it's a system. So anyway, if there's something hidden and it actually heads out to the public, beta channel would be where I would look.
But, now you bring up an interesting idea. Like there's these AI-enabled apps and things, and they're clearly they're coming out drops, so they obviously have been tested somewhere. I wonder if they were in the enablement package, just disabled for the vast majority of people. Like if you were in the secret club, when you got that update, you saw these features.
Yeah.
Windows Weekly listeners, if any of you out there were
this is like a conspiracy call-in show. Listen, all I'm saying is UFOs are real, and I was impregnated by one, so this happens.
Congratulations.
I know. I'm very proud.
But you can't argue with the fact that they're dropping a bunch of software none of us have seen before.
Yep. Well, and by the way, there have been little hints of this all year, right? I don't remember the details of the time periods anymore, but this year, you and I and Leo and maybe Micah, depending on the timing, have talked about a feature that's like, this thing just came out of nowhere. They never tested this. They did this with the new OneDrive. Remember last November and October when that thing first appeared? Like they never tested it. It just showed up in stable.
Well, but they did test it. We just weren't with it. So
I would like to believe that they tested it. I mean, I just, I mean, maybe.
And we don't know. We don't know how big these updates are. I'm telling you, I suspect there isn't another channel that it's just feature flag. It's off.
There's definitely like a flag situation, right? Like we see in browsers. Like definitely
it's such a great way to do that. It's just use this channel, and then for your secret club of friends, you push the switch for them so they can play with the feature.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old fashioned. I like the idea that I signed up for something and I'm going to test something and then I test that thing. Not that they play mind games with me and like see if he notices you.
We've definitely had updates where we wondered like, what was in this update again? Like there's always something visible, but nothing significant. I just wonder what's been invisible.
Yeah.
And
so you have a special flash drive you plug in, and if you have it, then it knows that you're part of the secret club.
It's easier to do this than it is to build a whole other channel.
Right.
No, in fact, I've been trying, I struggle with certain things, the way that Microsoft builds software and has built software, by the way, for decades. This is not brand new or anything. This notion that there's like a build trunk and then they have these branches that they go off and these things are serviced similarly, identically, or differently, depending on, what they are and blah, blah, blah. And that when you look at the way that 23H2 relates to 22H2, you see that this thing it does not reset the compatibility clock. It also, but actually, no, it does. It actually does support, it resets the support time table, interestingly.
Right.
Because it's 2 years out and, from the first one. And, but it wouldn't otherwise. I mean, it certainly, it won't require that staggered kind of CFR style release because nothing has changed internally. It's the same. It's built off the same source code. It's not a fork of the source code, a branch, as Microsoft would call it. It's the same. It is 22H2. It just has a different name. So we had Windows 11 version 22H2, and then some, build number for each of the things over time. And then this one says 23H2, but really it's just a continuation of the build. It's just the same build, major build. So anyway, that's as I understand it today. My therapist is going to mint this month. I will say when we were at the event, I should add too, I didn't mention this. When we were at the event, Mary Jo and I and Chris Hoffman and others asked every person from Microsoft we could get our hands on, and Frank Shaw is in charge of communications. Like, what's going on? Like you just said this thing. It doesn't make any sense. Like what is actually happening? And I don't mean this in a mean way, but the fact that each of them had a completely different answer was humorous. But the one thing that, and none of them knew the answer really, right? Like none of them were like, this is it. They're like, yeah, I don't know, including guys in the Windows, okay. But the one thing they all said was, oh, you don't guys, you don't have to worry. John Cable is going to write a post. This guy, right? He's the guy who explains every release of Windows basically to the public. at blogs.windows.com. So he comes up, at least once a year, sometimes twice. And he's going to answer all your questions, And they're like, okay, when's that coming out? Like, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday. Anyway, it came out yesterday. And honestly, it's worth looking at. It's at, like I said, blogs.windows.com. It's called How to Get the Latest Windows 11 Innovations. And he links to the use of Meteor announcement post about the fall update and all the new features. But then he just basically kind of explains what's happening here. And among the things that he says is that Windows, so this is another thing we have to deal with annually. Windows, no one gets this right. I feel this is my semantic perfectionist thing. Mm-hmm. There's something coming called the Windows 11 2023 update. People are going to call Windows 11 version 23H2 the Windows 11 2023 update. Those are not the same thing. The update is the thing you install to get to 23H2, right? So he mixes and matches that too, like everyone from Microsoft does. But sometime in the second half of this year, and there's only a couple months left, Microsoft will release this thing. Now, using the dates that he supplies for other things I said this earlier, it will be November or December. The earliest could be Patch Tuesday in November, frankly, where this you will as a Windows 11 person on 22H2, right, will get this enablement package and one new feature. So that will be a big one. A couple other things we should talk about. So John Cable's post is worth reading. Copilot, right? The big excitement, only available in North America and parts of Asia and South America right now. So Microsoft's been talking this thing up for 6 months. Everyone who lives in Europe, you don't get it. What's going on there? And Microsoft does not say this, but Microsoft told us it is in fact because of the DMA, that Digital Market Authority new law. Yeah. And the gatekeeper stuff. So they're working with the EU regulators to figure out a schedule where they can get this in and maybe make changes to it, like they offered to do for Teams, like they are going to do in Windows with the Edge integration stuff. This will be a different product in the European, not the European Union, the European Economic Area, right? Which is not just the EU, but also parts of Eastern, or what I think of as Eastern Europe that aren't in the EU. I think this will apply, I think it applies to the UK as well. Large parts of Asia, Australia, New Zealand, bunch of it. So Copilot, the marquee feature of this fall update / 23H2 is actually not available today. Sorry. It's not in those places.
Wow. Being a global company is hard.
Well, especially today. Yeah. I mean, it was bad enough with, what was that? The European privacy law. I'm sorry, the data retention. Yeah, that bad enough, right? That was a big thing. This is way worse. The EU just went to Apple today and said, guess what? You have to open up all your ecosystems now.
Yeah, I saw that. We'll see how that goes.
Yep. I can.
That's going to get messy.
Apple, it's not going to go well.
Right. Oof.
So, yeah. And the other thing is, if you're a business probably, or an individual who has hardware, I don't know how this could even happen. I suppose it's possible. But if you somehow are on 21H1, that's the initial release of Windows 11, like you actually said no to 22H2, you can update, of course, to 23H2, but that's going to be a full operating system install, like he called it a full operating system swap.
Swap? What he means, I don't like that.
I love when they use language they've never used ever. It's a version upgrade. It's what every feature update, capital F, capital U, used to be, which was October would come, the new update would arrive. It would take a long time to install. You'd reboot, and it would be sitting there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes longer. It would take a long time.
But it's pop up the very friendly dialogue. It's like, we're making sure we don't lose your files. Like,
yeah, exactly. Right.
Is there a possibility you could?
Yeah, that's what's happening. I never even thought about that. Now I'm scared.
I never even. Thank you for putting that in my brain. Why did you say that? And,
also, calling it a swap is terrifying to me too. What are you taking away?
I don't know. I don't know where that language came from. Yeah, very strange. I mean, it technically that's sort of what's happening, right? I mean,
But the big bet to me is the extension of support. I mean that's Microsoft committing money to the product. Right.
Well, I mean, it is, but this schedule was kind of preordained with the initial release of Windows 11, because depending on, I think it's 2 years, right? I mean, 2 years is the point. So this is, it's an interesting thing. They if you're on 22H2, which is most are, I'm sure the vast majority are, like this is just you've just installed or will in October install this humongous update. And then November, December will arrive and you'll see an update. It will say, hey, you're getting a new version of Windows. And the thing will reboot so quick, you won't have time to turn around. You get like, what is this? What? I thought this was going to be a big deal. And it's,
of course, the implied in that is that if you don't take this update, you don't get support.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to force it on you, right? I mean, they'll basically, yeah, it will happen. I mean, unless you turn your computer off.
There are ways to block it, but the implied part of this is no, we won't support that version anymore.
That's right. Yeah. So anyway, this is, why do I stress over this? Part of it is a mental, but part of it is I write a book, and one of the things that and listen, in writing a book, I am basically putting myself in the same position, the same shoes as anyone who supports users in any organization or in your family or whatever it is. And the thing is, up until Windows 11, if you had some version of Windows, you could say, go do this exact thing and it will always be the same. And you cannot say that now, and it is very hard. I have, I use OneDrive. I still use it because it's still true. OneDrive. There are 3 different OneDrive interfaces today you could have in Windows 11, and there is no way to know which one you're going to have.
What the?
Yeah. It is not good. And so when I look at this stuff, I kind of blew through it, but there's a big list of new features that just arrived in preview form and will arrive in 2 weeks, right? For everybody else. Not every single one of those is going to arrive at the same time for everybody. Microsoft, classic. And I just said, Copilot's not coming to Europe and elsewhere. So there's a lot of caveats now. And that's not how my life works. I want to definitively say, do this and it will work.
Yeah.
And this makes it very hard. I'm not just a weirdo. Like, I mean, I am, but it's not just that. Like this is breaking my ability to accurately describe and concisely describe something to people, just as it is a problem for anyone who supports users of any kind. I think this is a huge problem.
Do you think this feels to me like feature flags run amok?
Yeah.
Like they've done so much of
feature flags,
different features.
Yeah, they throw confetti in the floor and they're like, if the purple ones are up, then you get this feature. Like, I mean, there's no way to know.
Don't know. But the more salently, they don't get to a consensus and go, this is the version, and now everybody rolls up to it. Right. It's almost like there's feature flag orphans out there. They're just stranded in a test version.
When I heard that 23H2 was going to be an enablement package, I thought, thank God. Because for once in this damn thing's product cycle, I can finally say definitively, because I know that if you're on 22H2, you're just going to get it. And you're going to have all the features, and on we go. And I was like, for a few months in the fall, it's going to be great. I can update the book. It's going to be fine. But now I have to come up with a whole strategy, not to mention timing for this, because if I put out a bunch of stuff and I replace whatever it was there, most of the people reading this book will look at this and say, that's not what it looks like. Like it's something I actually have to think about. And I'll be publishing something about my plan for this, but it's a nightmare. And again, there are people out there like, I don't care. I don't know why you care about this. And I'm like, I don't know why you're reading my stuff. But
You've always cared about it. Yeah.
If that's your question, what are you doing here? Are you an Apple guy? But again, it's not just, my personal predilections. It's,
right. It does sound like the fall update is the perfect time to ship the book, because everybody should be on that, and it should be the one consistent moment.
Yeah. Well, it's gonna be a little later than that. But yeah, anyway, I do have a plan, but it will be before 23H2 ships for sure. Yeah. Yep. So anyway, there you go. That's WTF is happening with Windows 11.
All right.
And,
I think we'll take a quick break before we come back with some follow-ups and the rest of the show. I want to take a moment to tell you about Lookout, who are bringing you this episode of Windows Weekly. As you all know, business has changed forever. Boundaries to where we work or even how we work have disappeared. We talk about that a lot on this show. That means your data is always on the move, whether it's on a device, if it's in the cloud, if it's across networks, if it's at the local coffee shop, if it's all the way in New Zealand sitting by some cows. Data's everywhere, and while it's great for your workforce, it's a challenge for IT security. And Lookout makes IT security a lot simpler. Lookout helps you control your data and free your workforce. With Lookout, you'll gain complete visibility into all of your data so you can minimize risk from external and internal threats, plus ensure compliance. By seamlessly securing hybrid work, your organization doesn't have to sacrifice productivity for security. Lookout works with multiple point solutions and legacy tools in today's environment, and all of that is just too complex to try and handle all of those bits and pieces on your own. With its single unified platform, Lookout reduces IT complexity, giving you more time to focus on whatever else comes your way. Good data protection isn't a cage, it's a springboard that lets you and your organization bound forward toward a future of your making. Visit lookout.com today to learn how to safeguard data, secure hybrid work, and reduce IT complexity. That's lookout.com. Thank you, Lookout, for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly. All right, let's do some follow-ups on the juicy goss.
Well, we talked about Panos Panay, right? So it's official. I think Bloomberg kind of broke that story last week, and it's true. You know, in fact, they wrote that story before Dave Limp appeared at his last Amazon Devices event, right?
Surprise!
I forget what day that was. Tuesday, maybe, or
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was Tuesday. Yeah.
And Dave Limp's great. I mean, a very different style from Panos Panay. It's going to be very interesting. The Amazon events, to me, have always, especially in recent years, been most notable for. I keep using this word, but this kind of tsunami of product.
Yep.
That comes out of that company. It's astonishing.
It's ridiculous. And spaghetti project after spaghetti project that they make you buy and then have you test for them. Don't get me started.
Sometimes get rid of very quickly. I give a little credit for that. And also, you know, obviously the problems with that. But
Amazon's also talked about the fact that their LX plans have not gone well, that it was supposed to generate revenue.
Yeah.
It just hasn't.
So we have
that was a preamble for seriously cutting budget.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this because we're going to talk about the AI stuff they did announce at this event, and about that alternate future that I always sort of thought Google would do, where they did this for, and I'm sure they will, really, right? But it's weird to me that Google hasn't taken the Assistant and made that their focus of AI, because it's voice control, and that always made more sense to me than people typing on a little keyboard or whatever. Like that's kind of weird, but. Amazon has developed this ecosystem at great cost, and it definitely has users. It just hasn't, they haven't turned their hardware into a profitable, successful business, which is why Panos Panay is perfect for it. Anyway,
there's a corollary to all of this, which is that large language models disrupt all these voices.
Yep.
Because the LLM is better at taking people's statements and realizing value.
Right. No, you're right. What I meant was the user doesn't have to know this. It just it uses the voice as the front end. Like the whole back end could change or it could access both or whatever. But
tech companies do need to know about this, and it's very disruptive. Like it's a chance to reboot the business entirely.
That's right. So Amazon is going forward with Alexa, and Google has just announced, like Microsoft is like, we've got Do It, we've got Bard, we've got these other things. I mean, they're just doing all kinds of stuff, so honestly, I'd have to go back and really look at IO again to remember, but I don't know that Assistant was a big chunk of this stuff. I don't think it was. So.
Yeah, Bard was. Yeah, that's a good point. Bard really did take the show, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, but it's just different approaches, and then of course I'm sure a lot, Richard and Mary Jo and some others have as well. But I've heard from so many Microsoft employees about Panos, and a lot. Amazon used to be the first landing for a lot of ex-Microsoft executives. They would go to Amazon first, and then they would kind of burn out there pretty quick because the culture there is very different. And it's very frugal. And of course, Microsoft has actually gotten there now, but it's kind of a slap in the face to what you used to when you come from Microsoft. And I heard from at least two different people who said this company's going to chew him up and spit him out. Like he's not going to fit in there. He's not like that. And we'll see, because I I don't know what to. I don't know. I really don't know.
There are some Microsoft execs that have done well at Amazon. I think of guys like David Treadwell.
How about Charlie Kindle, who basically started the business we've been talking about? That was something he brought to Microsoft, and they said no.
Yeah.
You know.
So I mean, but it is the exception. I think most. Most don't last.
Most don't last. That's exactly.
The number of like less than a year back at Microsoft is astonishing.
Yeah. That's right. Or they move on, to Google. Actually, Google seems to be or Meta. Actually, Meta became the big one. Meta, as we were recording this show, Meta had an event and released a bunch of new products, including a bunch of AI stuff. And a lot of that was just ex-Microsoft guys, which I think is kind of interesting. So there have been different, a lot of Microsoft guys ended up at Google, like I said, including Mark Lukowski, who just left in a huff, by the way, under very bad circumstances, and kind of burned bridges the way he does. And then a bunch of guys, went to Meta. A lot of the MRXR guys, all that stuff, a lot of them ended up there, and they're shipping product now. Not that anyone's going to buy any of it, but at least they're trying. And I appreciate that. So anyway, Amazon, I wish Panos luck. I really do.
You see something. And I think Amazon the Kindle product is untouchable. It's phenomenal.
Yep.
You can question the Alexa product line, and when they've certainly made a bunch of them.
Yeah.
It's
in stuff. I like that it's in stuff. Right?
Yeah, it'll be interesting, but no laptops unless.
So that's okay. So that's an interesting point because someone asked me the other day about this. Why do they ship so much of this stuff? And it's like, guys, they got to have something that you use it with, right?
Yeah.
Google has the assistant. Siri has the phone. They both have phones rather, and there's billions of users. That's straight up. Microsoft's strategy with Cortana was to put it on phone first because that's where it makes the most sense, but then use the billion-strong Windows user base to drive that usage, and that, didn't work for all the obvious reasons. But it's interesting to wonder maybe if they had kept Cortana around, if that wouldn't have been a good brand. Although, I think we all agree Copilot's an awesome brand. But Cortana would have been a better front end than Bing, just from a perception perspective.
Agreed. You're so right. Yeah.
I always thought the tie to the video game was problematic because the character in the video game was pretty sexualized.
Oh, and by the way, went insane. So
that's right.
And if you want to talk about the original AI hallucination, play Halo 4 or 5 or whatever that was. I don't remember anymore. That's what happens. In fact, the new game is kind of about resurrecting her reputationally, if you will. Whatever. Kind of like 2010 was about, Dave and 20.
If we didn't have enough problems with the science fiction effects around AI, you literally named your product after a video game. Yeah. She was an
AI construct. That's how they describe her. Anyway, so Panos is off. Good. I'll be interested to see. Well, he will be the guy leading next September's event, but he likes to be out there. I wonder if they're going to do more interim announcements for a change. Who knows? We'll see.
We shall see.
He's got to have some time to get his feet under him, understand the new ecosystem, look at the product lineup,
and time to be told no a few times.
Yeah. Well, you know what though? Amazon doesn't say no a lot. With this stuff, there's no doubt he got pushback on whatever product plans he had this year. Like Amazon, like I said, they release a lot of product. If his goal is to invent new form factors and whatever, this is honestly his best chance.
I misunderstood. I thought you meant going from Microsoft to Amazon was hard because they are more lean.
They are as a company. I did say that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, that's correct. They are a more kind of austere, frugal company. But the part he's going into,
right?
My God, and Richard's right. Last year, a lot of information came out from Amazon in particular about how much they had invested. We'll call it dropped in a toilet and lost. We might call it too, but with very little payback. Mm-hmm. But they're still trying, and that's the thing that I think is kind of amazing.
You do have to give them credit. I give them credit for that. They do continue. Yeah. I thought for sure the Echo frames were no more. And then at this event, they were like, you know what? We're still doing those things. And now we've got a new version. I thought.
And they're also, unfortunately, there's a very common practice happening these days where online services are getting more expensive. And one of the kind of ways that can happen is you take services that used to be free and you make them paid.
Yep.
Microsoft did that with some Microsoft Teams premium features, for example, that used to be, were sort of free a little while there. Amazon's going to be doing that with some of their services because, of course, it's easy to get disgruntled at that. But, remember, these companies aren't charities, right? Mm-hmm. They're trying to make money. So they're trying to figure out a business model that makes sense. And we'll see.
All right.
Okay.
Yes. What else?
Just real quick, we don't have to beat this to death, but I've been writing a series of articles about that Xbox leak, and the couple that have happened since the last time we spoke is that I've got to find these things fascinating. When the PS5, so it's hard to remember back, but the Microsoft and Sony revealed their next generation consoles kind of in tandem, and they had announced that they were doing them, and then I think it was March the following year, the year that they eventually shipped 2020, right, the pandemic. They both came out with their specs releases, like this is the specifications of these consoles, and they were very close, frankly. But the PS5 did some things that the Xbox wasn't going to do, most notably through like I/O throughput. And it was like a dramatic advantage for PS5 as first announced. In fact, I believe that this is why the direct storage technology happened. I'm not saying it wasn't happening already, but I do not think it was going to ship in the Xbox Series X and S originally. But because the throughput on the PS5 was so high, they had to do something. I think they released it early. So anyway, that was one of the things that came out of it. But it's fascinating that at the time, everyone in the Xbox leadership team was beside themselves with joy because they came out first. And when Sony came out with theirs, they're like, oh, we're all set. Everything's going to be great. They're like, after 7 years of starting off a generation with a price and performance and messaging disadvantage to PlayStation, Phil Spencer said, I can't help myself. I woke up this morning with a sense of dread, and now I'm like soaking in it. And I'm so proud of our team. Like, he was really happy. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately for Phil Spencer and the rest of these guys, the way the things went down in real life does not map to this at all. The PlayStation has a huge lead over Xbox in this generation. It hopefully isn't as bad as it was with Xbox One, but not good. And they went into this thinking, we're going to win this one. Like they saw what Sony was doing. Like, we're going to win. And I just don't know how they came away with that reaction, because if you look at the specs as announced that day, a lot of them were very similar, by the way, like identical. But they were the throughput stuff. One of the big things that both Sony and Microsoft were trying to get rid of with this generation of games, it's not just 4K 60 frames a second. Like, that's important, but it's the lag time when you go to load a new level or something, that with the wait screen or whatever you want to call that. And Sony explicitly promised no wait screens, I believe. People have told me Microsoft did too. I can't find that, but
it's not up to them. The game developer has to decide that, and it's however the game developer does things, right?
I think the idea, though, is that if you have this underlying power in the console, you shouldn't ever have to worry about it.
Shouldn't have to, but it all depends on how the dev implements the game. Like,
the
idea that the manufacturer would mandate that, it's insane.
Yeah, well, consoles are closed systems and supposed to be a clean experience, et cetera, et cetera. You're right. No, but you're right. I've told the story so many times, but it's so relevant here. It's when the Xbox 360 was coming out, I visited their campus and saw it early. And at the time, it was like these two Power Mac G5 towers next to each other with a hand controller attached to it. And Microsoft had announced the console was this beautiful little white thing. And this development station was like the size of a Volkswagen. And I remember I asked the guy, I said, how are you going to get that inside that? And he said, oh, no, we got guys working on it. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, my word.
They're running emulators, and emulators are just not efficient. So you throw a lot of horsepower.
Right. But the other piece of the Xbox 360 that was new to that day, we forget these things, was that they were going to allow game makers to update their games, right? This has never happened before. You shipped a game, and your game was the game, and that was it.
Came on a DVD.
Yep. So this was a big advance. And of course, I'm the way my brain works. I was like, well, hold on a second. Doesn't that mean that a bunch of these guys are going to release like really poor quality games that will need to be updated with massive updates all the time? And he's like, no, we have a system in place to prevent that. And if you're an Xbox guy, you are nodding your head knowingly right now, because day one multi-100 gigabyte game updates are not just a thing; they are the norm.
Yeah,
you know,
normal.
And giving third-party developers too much latitude sometimes maybe isn't the right approach.
Yeah, but when you're coming from half a dozen big companies and you either get their games or you don't, you're gonna suck it down.
Yeah.
Right? Fallout 76 needed those patches, man. Still need.
So the other thing, I didn't write this in my article, but with regard to the PS5 versus the Xbox, you got to remember back in March 2020, there was only one Xbox. It was the Xbox Series X. They didn't announce the S until very late in the game. In fact, it was a little secret at Microsoft. I don't think the board of directors even knew about it up until very, very close to the launch. And that console is lower powered. I think it's GPU. I don't know if it's CPU and GPU or just GPU, but it's not as high powered, obviously, as the Series X. That's the flagship. So the Series X and PlayStation 5 are close, except for in I/O throughput. But the Xbox Series S is not. And unfortunately, when you announce these things to the world and you give developers, you're like, listen, you need to hit both these specs. You know, again, left to their own devices, a lot of these guys are like, well, we're just going to target the S because it has to work on both. And, you know,
anything on the S, work on the S.
I think that played a big role in the delta in quality between Xbox and PlayStation games in this generation, where PlayStation more often hit 4K 60 frames, more often, or maybe always, had no weight screens. And I think that's part of the real world problem. And unfortunately, Phil Spencer and those other guys who were so joyous over this, they knew that, right? I mean, like you had, and how do you not immediately know that that's what's going to happen? I don't know. And there was another, so this one made the rounds.
Can we talk about how is the Xbox leak timing suspect? I mean, as soon as the Activision Blizzard deal is clear, it's going to go through. And let's face it, part of the way they got that deal through was to tell them how poorly Xbox was doing, how weak their gaming story was. And then they drop this massive document, mysteriously appears. Right. And you can see they have incredible plans. And there's a larger scope of things. They love their product.
I love the way your brain works. And I think the same way. But the only thing that stands against that being true is they leaked a lot of third-party information, which hurts their relationships.
Right.
There are going to be game makers who say, you know what, we were going with you day one, and now we're not. We're going with Sony. We can't afford this, kind of thing.
Right.
And I think that was a huge embarrassment for them. It also creates a PR problem, which is like, okay, but these documents were true as of whatever data, this is not necessarily what we're doing now. And you face this thing where the awesomeness of what's coming undercuts what you're actually doing now.
Right.
And you might actually have better things in some cases that are going to be coming on a different schedule, the same schedule. We talked about this notion that the next Xbox could be based on ARM, which is crazy. So I hear you. And my brain goes right there. But no, based on some of the stuff, and you could see it in Phil Spencer, publicly and internally talking to his team, like we really failed our partners on this one. This is bad. And the FTC and Microsoft both admitted it was Microsoft's fault. It wasn't deliberate. It was a mistake, but it was, I mean, honestly, this was, I think like you, I'm right with you, but oh, for sure. It was crazy.
Well, and however it was, and perhaps the people who did leak it against the will of the company were thinking that. It's like, we don't spend this much.
Yeah. Though that's a big motivation of people who leak. That question comes up from time to time. Why would anyone tell you anything? And it's like, well, these people believe that my heart is in the right place and that and they don't think their own company is doing a good enough job
of telling you how great they are.
Yep. And maybe this could help with the public perception or whatever. Yep. So that could absolutely be the case. Because honestly, the plans that leaked are exciting. If you're an Xbox fan, this should excite you quite a bit. So that's neat.
Yeah. Hurting partners is serious.
It's bad. And the other one I've written up so far is about Nintendo, and this one was widely reported around, and this one has been poo-pooed by everybody. If you don't think that Microsoft could buy Nintendo, and I mean literally, it could actually happen, you might want to go reread this bit of it because it could happen. They have incredibly close relationships. Everyone's like, Microsoft couldn't buy a Japanese company. I was like, I don't think you know how that works. Actually, they could. It's just that Nintendo has seen great success on doing their own thing. And at the time of this discussion, it came up because Microsoft was going to buy TikTok. Remember that insanity?
Yeah.
And I was so against this. They were being
pushed by the government to do that. I don't know that they
but part of what comes out internally is actually there was a big group at Microsoft that really wanted this to happen because they wanted this to be their consumer play.
Well, there's only so many social media platforms that ever come up for sale. So the fact that it was possible, why wouldn't you?
That's right. Exactly right. Yep, that's exactly how those people phrased it. And there was a guy who was in charge of Microsoft commercial marketing under Chris Capasella, who wrote Chris and Phil Spencer, the guy in charge of Xbox, and said, guys, I don't know what this TikTok thing is, but please explain to me why we're not buying Nintendo. It seems to me that our play with consumers, if we're going to be successful, is games. It's not TikTok. And they were like, yup. And then both of them, well, Chris was very circumspect. He kind of said, yeah, I like where your head's at, blah, 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 some positive stuff. I know there have been rumors and everything. And then Phil was like, blah, 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 blah. He couldn't stop talking about it. He was like, yeah, no, we've talked about this. Like, we want to do this. Like, and this, and people kind of went off on how excited Phil Spencer was and how like pie in the sky this seemed. But honestly, if Nintendo does another like Wii U type thing, like that could happen. So
yeah, I'd just be interested to see how the Japanese government will respond to that.
Yeah, well, if China is any guide, it will change some laws and make it impossible. So, which is what happened at TikTok, and that's why Microsoft left, and Oracle sucked up the remains of that, and we are where we are today. Thank God. So yeah, interesting stuff. Anyway, there's a lot more. I'll definitely have 3, 5. I don't know how many we are, but there's a lot more to come in this, and this league is just. God, it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's fantastic. Oh, it really is amazing.
Yeah, some of the stuff in there is pretty wild. We had someone on Tech News Weekly last week kind of going through not just what the kind of hardware stuff being the big leaks, but some of the other conversations that took place.
To me, it's the conversations that are more interesting. Yeah. And I know a lot of these people, I like, everyone, like, I think Richard was talking earlier about this Windows 11 thing, and like all of a sudden you see like a certain amount of competence here and how nice that is. And I like Phil Spencer, and I there are little things like it didn't go after mobile in a strong way, which I think is a strategic mistake. But when I see Chris Capasella and Satya Nadella and others in Microsoft talking about gaming and how aggressive they are and how aggressive they were before Activision Blizzard, there were huge hints that they were going to do something like this. They were talking about buying Warner Brothers Interactive or ZeniMax, which they eventually did buy. And Nadella said, buy both. Why? Buy both. Let's do both.
Why do we? We have to pick.
And yeah, you don't have to pick. We can buy both. I mean, that says to me a lot about the committee, because they can talk. Anyone can get on a stage and say things, right? But when you talk internally like this, this is real.
And it's exciting when we get the inside view and see that they are an aggressive company trying to do.
Because you don't get that a lot on the outside. You really don't.
You can't.
Not these
days. He's the CEO of a $1 trillion company.
I know, but come on, Ballmer would go out there and beat his chest like a gorilla. Like, he got some intent there. Satya Nadella, like, is he an AI intent or an AI construct or whatever? Yeah, I mean, what's going on with this guy?
Well, they sent him to CEO school, and he speaks very carefully.
Yes. Oh my, a little too carefully, frankly.
Because he moves stock prices very easily.
Okay.
So it's
no, that's true. Yeah.
And the SEC can go after him. He cannot make speculative statements.
Sure. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm a big fan of transparency. I think part of the issue I have with Nadella is that
in every so often he will do an RD brief insiders. But even then, he stays on screen. Like, he is not a casual person. And so to see him
that's right
is really interesting, because that facade does not break.
Yeah. Where were you when you were wearing a suit, Mike? Was it like a CVS or something?
No, it was the Kaiser Permanente Pharmacy.
Okay. Well, okay. Like a CVS.
Yeah, exactly like a CVS.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, you strike me as more casual than Satya Nadella, but you did wear a suit to a pharmacy.
It was right after work, so I had to run inside, and everyone seems confused.
After Labor Day, really?
Yeah.
So okay.
Odd bastard.
We're never going to get through this show.
Nope.
Okay, so there's so much going on. It's crazy. So a couple of antitrust things, and dear God, you thought this was over. The UK CMA provisionally approved Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, proving my point that if Microsoft came up with a nonsense solution, the nonsense regulators at the CMA would utterly fall for it, and it looks like they did. So sometime in October, sometime they're just going to do it. Now, here's the thing. We forgot. They're not the only insane people in the world. And the FTC has just today revived their battle trying to unwind the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition before it happens, right? Which they can't do, right? So they have this. They have two choices when they want to go after a company for antitrust violations. They can go to federal court, which is what usually happens, right? You have you sue them in federal court like they federal court like they did with Google, and that's the DOJ, but they're now in court like they just did with Amazon, right? Okay, cool. Or they have this internal process they can do, and sometimes the internal process happens, and then if they're successful, they go after the federal court version. Typically, and by typically, I mean 100% of the time, if they lose in federal court, the internal thing disappears. And that's what originally happened. Back in July, I think it was, when all this went down, they closed their internal case. Well, they just reopened it, and yikes. So why would they do this? No one knows. But and what do they hope to achieve? I can tell you categorically, they cannot prevent Microsoft from acquiring Activision Blizzard. They can't. So the only thing they can do, and they have said this, is they would try to unwind it after the fact. They would divest Activision Blizzard from Microsoft after they've acquired it, which is what some people want to do with, Meta and Instagram and WhatsApp, or Google and DoubleClick and, whatever.
Well, and then, one would argue that's what happened to Ma Bell back in the day, is they broke the company up and spun it off into different pieces, or Imperial Oil.
Yeah, I don't know if it came after No, you're right. I'm sorry. That parallel is fine. Yep, that's true. There are, I'm trying to think. I was going to say there are successful examples of that happening, but actually that might be the only one. And it is a big one. It's a big one.
The joke, of course, is that they rolled back up again ultimately over 20 years.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's exactly right. That's
because there are such things as natural monopoly.
Yeah. So, geez, I thought I was done kind of dumping on all these people, but I guess I'm not.
Yeah, and then I don't know why you keep going back to get spanked again.
Well, after a while, you have to wonder.
Yeah. So the FTC, we knew this was coming because the FTC and Amazon were holding talks over the summer. They broke down. Amazon wasn't able to come to settlement terms. The FTC this past week sued Amazon for monopoly abuse. They say that Amazon has two monopolies, both related to e-commerce, that they serve each other and are sort of an unholy alliance of virtuous cycle, and that there are cross monopoly abuses going on, most of which are related to their internal systems for using partners to sell their products, et cetera, forcing them to use their, whatever it is, and not setting prices.
Amazon logistics.
All that great Amazon stuff. Let's not waste too much time on this. I wrote a huge thing about this today. I will just say this up front. I think everyone knows this. If you listen to me at all, God help you, I'm sorry. But I am a big proponent of the need for big tech to be regulated all around the world. I think that every single one of these companies needs to be examined, all of their business practices, and that adjustments need to be made, and that what the EU has done with the DSA and the DMA is a beautiful template for what should happen worldwide. And we could kind of take it on a case-by-case basis, right? What are the monopolies? How are they abusing them? Who are they hurting? How? What we should do? What's the resolution? Yada, yada.
I agree with you on that. The way they did it. We could
spend the rest of our lives on that. But I look at Amazon and I think to myself, okay, you're going to go to a court in the United States, and you're going to tell people, we're going to sit in a jury, that if you are successful, if you beat back this company, you will get your products a day later than usual. Things will cost more. You're going to lay out this thing where it's like, we live in this comfort society. And I'm like, I don't know that this is what people want.
Yeah.
And I know that we often kind of vote against our own best interests. I know from my readers that when I rail against things like Apple's crazy app store fees, which are arbitrary and are 10 times higher than MasterCard's, that some people believe that they should be able to do whatever they want. It's their platform, and that there's a whole conversation to be had about short-term impact, long-term impact. You don't know the innovation that's being prevented from happening because of their policies, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm trying to apply this to Amazon. And I got to be honest, Cory Doctorow, who I love, wrote an editorial in the New York Times that I actually utterly disagree with every sentence almost. And I'll just give you the one example, because again, I don't want to beat this to death, but he was talking about how, and actually Jeffrey Fowler at the Washington Post did a nice interactive version of this, where you search for something on Amazon, and then you can highlight on the page all of the things that are ads, and it's most of the things. And to me, everyone who goes to Amazon and searches knows that it works like every other search engine. There are going to be sponsored results at the top, and you scroll down and there's real results, and they know that they have to look for the real results and they have to skip over the ads, and they just kind of do this. And the one thing no one mentioned is that there's a little button up at the corner that says search by, highest review or whatever, that the default view is the sponsored view, right? And by the way, you can get in, we're going to talk, my app pick today is an extension that will turn off all the sponsored things as Amazon search results. I mean, there are ways around it, right? My wife hated this example. I compared it. We go to a restaurant every Friday called Notch. We love Notch. It's a great restaurant. They have a nice menu. And every Friday they hand us the menu, but on top of the menu is the specials. And I said, the specials are the sponsored results, honey. It's just like that. It's the thing that happens before the thing you want to see. The thing about specials is it's the stuff they need to get rid of, right? Oof. Fish is perishable. A lot of fish on there. Or they had sushi one night, and the next 3 days they had sushi specials on there. Maybe they got a good deal somewhere from a fishmonger. If it's fish, it's not always fish. I don't know why I'm using fish, but whatever it is. And sometimes, if we're lucky, it's a win-win. It's something I really want. It's not what I expected. It's not what I was looking for. And they're able to get rid of something, save some money, and overcharge me for it. And I get something I don't usually get. And it's kind of fun. And she's like, it's not the same thing. And I said, no, it is the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. She says, people are paying for those. I'm like, people are paying for this. This is essentially, it's the same thing as a paid advertisement. It's driven by money need, that if we don't get rid of this, we're throwing it away, we're losing money. It's the same thing as being paid to do it. It behooves us as a business to save and or get money for doing this thing. It's the same thing. I said, do you hate Notch now because they told you this? She's like, no. So, okay, what's the problem?
I almost kind of want her to appear now and shout at the camera. It's not the same thing, but I honestly,
she
walked into Paul for this one.
I don't have it. She walked twice today. She walked into this room, and over there she goes, another thing about that Notch menu thing that you're wrong about.
Wow.
And I was like, I love that you're doing this, but I'm telling you, I'm going to beat it back every time, because this is honest. But the reason Amazon is in trouble and Notch is not, is that Notch may prefer one fishmonger over another and impact our little local economy a little bit. But Amazon is a worldwide economic superpower, and when they make a decision, they can really hurt people and companies, right? This is a different. It's scale. It's all about scale. So, and that's the monopoly problem. The behavior that you have as a scrappy startup is awesome, but when you're Microsoft or Apple or Google, it's not so good. It's illegal. You can't do that stuff. So, these are the things that people need to understand, about antitrust. That's the hard thing. So, is Amazon breaking the law? Of course they are. What, are you kidding me? It's a matter of degree, and in many ways. But yeah, of course they are. But I also kind of wonder about the net consumer impact. And maybe I'm thinking short term, right?
And when you come at this from a Sherman Act point of view, it says, is there consumer harm?
Right.
That's the usual.
And a lot of people would say, I'm sitting here at 3:00 in the afternoon on a Friday, and oh God, I need a cable. And it's here on Saturday morning. Mm-hmm.
Or, if you're in Seattle, it's there within the hour.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. And yeah, I mean, this is like saying, look, I know that some people in China committed suicide because they were making iPhones and they couldn't handle it. And that place is a sweat box or whatever this phrase is. And it's a horrible human rights disaster. You're going to not buy the iPhone?
Have you tried the phone?
I mean, really? Because, and then, same thing, Amazon abuses their workers. I think we all accept this. Amazon, no doubt, stacks the deck against partners and suppliers and small sellers and all that kind of stuff. They do everything that all these horrible, huge companies do.
Humans are bad, and we just need to be.
Yeah, companies are made by humans. Humans are bad. Companies are bad.
Yeah.
Cory Doctorow. Sorry.
And unfettered capitalism has consequences. So we fetter it.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. That's right. That's what regulation is. The fettering of capitalism.
Exactly.
There you go.
What's in the box needs to be on the packaging. You know, you have to say what you did, how you do it. You know, all of these things.
We were talking about pharmacies. I once described CVS as a candy store that has a little pharmacy in the back. And, you know, to CVS, candy is sort of like the ads are to Amazon. It's like this really easy way to make more money while still doing the thing you purport to do in the back, you know?
Now, Paul, about that candy thing and CVS being, I just have a disagreement. No, I'm kidding. That works.
There we go. Paul, another thing about your stupid analogy, you're a jerk.
Yeah, it is. It's a big old candy store. A big old candy store with medicine in the back. Yeah. It's like a movie theater. The concessions make all the money. So really,
there's
concessions
more candy in a CVS than there is in a movie theater. There is.
That's true. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There is. Why do they have so much candy? Why would they have? Why is there candy when I get gas? Why would I want food around where gas is? And also, candy is not
okay
food.
for travel.
You know
that
you get the idea.
I got to disagree with that one. If I'm traveling, I want to. But certainly the CVS thing, I'm still on board. I'm on board with your restaurant.
It's like I came here to get my diabetes medicine. I think I'll grab a Snickers bar on the way out, and for some reason, it's the size of a brick. You know, like serving size 1.
Oh my!
I don't know. Crazy.
Old man shouts at cloud. We're getting into some
I guess
territory.
So.
Here.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
that's
very diminishing. That's I feel like this is a valid complaint.
No,
it has nothing to do with Windows.
That's what it is. What I meant was the cloud, as in Windows in the cloud. No, it's those were all fair observations, but we're running out of time, so we got to get back to the show.
I know. I'm so sorry. All right, let's blow through Dev and AI. Even though there's a lot of this stuff. Maybe we should focus on the AI. So we already talked about Meteor Lake and how they reversed the schedule, right? So that's very interesting to me. Someone in the Discord a long time ago.
Meteor Lake. It's still weird to me that Meteor Lake wasn't in the machine. Like, what are you doing? Like, if you're going to announce a chipset,
this is very typical Microsoft, right? They're never on the latest thing. Although they did get into Intel, to do this special thing. One of the weird little notable things about Surface in recent years is the sheer number of custom things they've done with hardware makers, right? They create their what are they called? SH1. The ARM chipset is created in partnership with ARM, but I'm sorry, with Qualcomm, but they market it as their own thing. They've done special versions of AMD processors for Surface, right? And they partner with Intel on different things, including this new thing where, like I said, to my knowledge, and I believe this is true, the only and will ever be the only 13th gen mobile laptop with an NPU add-on. It's unprecedented, but it's also last gen because Microsoft. So they probably worked on it for a year. They knew this was coming. Who knows? It's too bad. Amazon bought Anthropic for its AI capabilities. For $4 billion. This company, this kind of reminds me, remember Microsoft lost DoubleClick to Google, and as a booby prize, they bought a company no one had ever heard of called Aquantive, which then they then wrote off like 2 years later for several $1 billion. I don't remember the exact number. Amazon, Microsoft has OpenAI. Google has been doing this, they've been doing this AI stuff for a long time. They've been curiously conservative about putting it out in the world. And Amazon, I get the feeling they're a little behind. And I think this is their attempt to kind of buy in to catch up, which is a great strategy for a monopolist, right? That's what they all do. It's one of the, it's got to be in the top 5. Like, what do? We got to catch up. Acquisition, right? I don't know anything about this company. I'm just throwing it out because it's an AI story.
Yeah, I don't. I know a little bit about Claude, but not much. And yeah, where there's been conversation about each of the different big tech companies kind of being behind in AI as we saw first OpenAI on its own doing what it was doing. Then, of course, Microsoft quickly caught up. Google is really playing out in the open. And then we have seen, well, not seen, but there have been plenty of reports about Apple's internal team working on stuff. Yeah, right. Amazon really was kind of in the dust.
Quiet and So something someday will disrupt Google search. It will probably be something AI. And one of the interesting things about this is, there's been disruption in our industry many times. It usually does come from an outside force, I guess. It's not typically an entrenched dominant party that comes up with something new and awesome, but whatever. It could happen, I suppose. And that's what's interesting, because honestly, most people would probably, the good money is probably a bet on Google here that they will, they'll be fine, and they'll maintain their monopoly and their dominance in search and all that kind of stuff. But Microsoft has a chance, Amazon for sure, and OpenAI, right? OpenAI is that outside disruptive force, aren't they? And all of this company that started as this cute little mom and pop cookie making company that we never need to make money is very aggressively going after the money, and just got valuated at double their value, I believe, from just 6 months ago. We'll see. This is when you see big tech moving this quick, we just talked about that with Microsoft, there's a reason. This disruption could leave a lot of companies behind that today are sitting pretty. So,
well, I would also argue that Amazon is one of the few that has the cloud resources sufficient to run really large-scale LLMs. They just didn't seem to be interested in doing it.
So this is going to sound like a weird comparison at first, but back in the day, if you will, when PCs were PCs and they were the only thing in the world, you had software, Windows, and apps, and then you had chips, and those chips were made by Intel usually, but also AMD. And that was the whole thing. But the way that chip building works today is almost nobody owns their own manufacturing capabilities anymore, right? Apple doesn't. They go through, I always say it wrong, TSMC or TMSC, whichever that is. Taiwan Semiconductor. Samsung has some capacity there. Intel is trying to become a fab maker. They're trying a different thing. The world is a little bit different. And the interesting thing about OpenAI is that they are to AI what Apple is to chip making, right? They have this really innovative thing, but they can't exist unless they have an infrastructure to run this stuff on. That's why they partnered with Microsoft, in a very one-sided partnership, I think, but that Microsoft was so desperate to get, they agreed to. And
I'm sorry, which way is it one-sided?
In OpenAI's way. Because Microsoft does get access. Well, Microsoft get access to capabilities, but they don't get exclusive access. And they're giving a lot of the stuff that runs off of Azure will benefit other companies.
Yeah, but meantime, they're paying for Azure.
Paid for it. No, I understand. This is the Microsoft wins even when they lose scenario. No, I understand it.
But what I'm saying is, half of OpenAI in the process. For giving Azure credit.
They give in the form of Azure credit. That will be part of their.
We'll give you this money now. Give it back to us. Yes. And now we own you. I think it was a pretty good deal for Microsoft.
Is that the Blimpie model? I'll gladly take a hamburger today for
the company store model.
No, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry, but I guess what I'm saying is OpenAI retains its central OpenAI-ness without having to give away the farm. So the point simply was OpenAI can't exist and can't be what it is right now without a Microsoft, Amazon, or Google. That's kind of fascinating to me. So anyway, they could be the great disruptor. And then do you allow this company to disrupt you when they're so reliant on you? It's kind of an interesting question, right?
Suddenly you turn the screws because it's taking over.
And that seems to be happening. In the meantime, they are not making enough money. They are short of cash and they are making sad noises.
Right. Thus the valuation, by the way. Yeah.
Well, and back to based on this current deal, Microsoft now has 49%. So
which under the terms of the deal is the most they can have. Well, I don't think they can go above 49. I believe that's the point. I think that the way they structure.
Now, do you wait for the bankruptcy and buy them in receivership? Because you can't buy more.
But Microsoft was relying on this as well, right? I mean, Microsoft needs this for this AI push. I mean, they're kind of they're codependent. It's not what do you call that?
Not a healthy
relationship, is it? Yeah, it's right. I was gonna say, it's the unhealthy version of there's a term for this, like the lamprey eel that hooks onto a shark.
Yeah.
Takes away the garbage.
Yeah, what is that? I can't think of what that's called.
What is the term? I can't believe I can't think of this.
Someone's going to say it.
No, codependent is the negative one. There's a positive.
The positive one. The symbiotic.
Symbiotic. That's it.
Yep. That's a good way to put it. So
I don't. I'm
benefit.
Yes. Right. Mutual beneficial.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway. will it turn into a codependent, or is it now? I mean,
it feels more codependent than symbiotic.
I was going to say it's a good conversation. It sure does. They're not going to promote it that way, but Okay, Amazon, like we already talked about this, I guess, basically enough. Generative AI features coming to. I think that's smart for them. I think this is. It could be good money after bad. We could debate that too.
A lot of these original machine learning models that did language back in the Siri days and so forth, which is a whole 10 years ago, they need to be replaced by LLMs. Like, that's the logical thing to do. The question is, can you shrink the LLM down enough to make it run in the device, or are you making it even more cloud dependent than it already was?
Right. That's the real reason that iPhone 15 runs hot. It's all. I don't know. No one has thought of that. It must be. StudioBot is not a big deal. This is a Google product. That's basically their version of GitHub Copilot. It's only in preview, really early preview, but it's now available more broadly than it was before. This will be something they add to their Android Studio tool. That you can ask it questions and get code samples, et cetera, all those expected things. And then we talked about Rust a few months ago. Microsoft is moving some kernel stuff to Rust, the programming language. Now they're moving device driver development, and that includes like the low-level WDM stuff, the newer kind of framework-based, what's it called, WFM probably, whatever the different ways to do drivers. I don't know anything about drivers, but this is again, going after the key ways in which malicious code can get into a computer. Mm-hmm. And getting people off of C and C++, which Mark Rosinovich has been very, very vocal about, the need for that to be in maintenance mode, not new code, right?
And pushing hard on the ecosystem to say, hey, we're just going to write the drivers for you. You guys suck at it.
Yeah, right. That's actually a big chunk of it, too.
Well, we had that whole story on the printing side of this, because this is where Print Nightmare came from. People, vendors won't build level 4 drivers. They just they're not going to build them. And so Microsoft's fine. We're building them. Oh, we're also going to make it not optional. You have to use the level 4 driver.
Yeah. In some ways, I like it.
Yeah. I mean, it'll decrease the number of messages about buying ink, which is a feature.
Right.
But it's also be a question of what features in a device are going to be surfaced, because often devices have a lot of advanced features that they have
honestly,
to
yes. Although, man, I know we're not still nowhere close to the paperless office or whatever, but I would think most people, and every time I say a general statement like this, I hear from the guy in the back room, I use printers all the time. Most people aren't printing a lot anymore for the most part. And maybe our needs for printers aren't as complicated as they used to be. If I need a print for some reason, like, I don't know, you wouldn't even do this for a flight anymore, but if you needed it for some reason, this thing spits it out. It's like, whatever. I don't care if it's 1,000 shades of gray or 100 shades of gray or color or what. I just need the stupid thing, and I don't care. It's not the output is not the final thing like it used to be, right? Like, the point of printing was that was how you communicated with people. Now it's all digital. PowerPoint was printed things out.
That was a world where these devices were commodity and consistent and uninteresting. Like, that shouldn't be an area of innovation anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Richard, I don't remember if you were around for the Unity bit. I think you were, but maybe it was 2 weeks ago.
I'm abundantly aware of it.
Yes.
Yes.
All of us end up being abundantly aware. Yeah.
The guy who runs Unity, by the way, is a former Xbox executive who was around during that. Mark Maddock, I think his name is, or Mark, something like that. He, Unity came out with this new runtime fee for its game engine that a lot of independent developers said, if you do this, we're going out of business. Like, you've just destroyed our business. Like, this can't make sense. And so they were just like, guys, we were kidding. Like, we're really sorry. You misunderstood. No. They pulled back on that. So whether or not the changes they made actually address everyone's concerns is not, I actually don't know. But there will be a Unity personal offering that remains free with no runtime fees, and they're capping. Actually, it's reverse cap. So there's a cap on how long that is the case. It used to be $100,000 in revenues. It's going up to $200,000, right? So if you make up to $200,000 a year in a game using the Unity engine, and you're in Unity personally, you're not going to pay them anything.
And I think I said when this first came out, I have a sneaky suspicion they're anchoring high.
Yeah.
And I think you're now.
Right. So now they level set where they wanted to be. And they're like,
that's right.
Yeah. Okay. That might be.
Oh, yeah, you did. I remember you bringing that up. Yes, it was sort of.
I think that's about right.
Yeah. Okay. No, we won't do that much. We'll just do this much. You can all agree to that, right?
Yeah. So And then finally, I assume most people are now familiar with this notion of passkeys because passkeys suddenly are everywhere. And the thing that's interesting about that is 2FA, where you use a device as like a second form of authentication, was on a real slow boil for a very long time. In fact, there are still services I use that do not use 2FA, which blows me away. But you're starting to see 2FA implementations everywhere. Even Apple has passkey implementations. Apple uses passkeys. Apple uses them like Apple does everything, a little weird, but they do their own thing. And GitHub was one of the first to kind of announce their support for this. And now it's, we've moved along. It's actually generally available. And it will be, are they going to force passkeys on you or just 2FA? Maybe it's just 2FA. I can't remember. They're going to force one of them on everybody. But this is just obviously a way to keep these code repositories that are on GitHub safe, right? So passkeys are great. Their implementation is fantastic. It's my favorite. The one I hit the most is Google's, which is how I know they didn't do it right because I keep hitting it. And seriously, could you get it right? And the Google passkey experience is I hit something with an account and it says, all right, do you want to enter your password or do you want to enter a passkey? And I'm like, I want to enter a passkey. And it's like, okay, put in your PIN or your fingerprint or whatever you have in Windows 11. I'm like, okay. And it's like, all right, nice. Now enter your password. What?
Yes,
like, okay, and then they're like, hey, do you want to use a passkey? And I'm like, yeah, I already have a passkey. And they're like, okay, you want to use a passkey? Here you go. Oh, you already have a passkey. All right, we're all done here. And it's like, dude, what? You just wasted 5 minutes of my time. The point of this is for this to go right through. And that's Google. So GitHub good, Google bad. Passkey, I think Google will adjust.
I was shocked, I have to say, because one password is the password manager that I use, and I had set up passkey support. It now supports passkeys as well. Oh, nice. Okay. And so when I got my new iPhone, I needed to log back into my Google accounts, and I was shocked that
it's a horror show.
No. I'm used to it being a horror show, like how you described. This time, I launched to log into Google, and then one password prompted said, "Do you want to use your passkey?" I said yes, and it logged me, and I didn't have to do anything else. I didn't have to type in a password.
Oh, it worked.
It actually worked as expected. So I don't know what was different.
You know why it worked though? You bypassed Google by using something else.
That's what.
I know you were signing into it.
But yeah, it was amazing.
Google's own UI is exactly what I just described. It's insane, and I hit this multiple times every single day because I have a bunch of Google accounts, and unfortunately, I mean, I try to use different browsers. Honestly, that's the best. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like you should use a passkey. I am using a passkey. All right, I will agree with you. And it's like you Windows hello authenticate, and then you type in your password, and then it says, okay, oh, you already have a passkey. I know. I told you that.
I just said I had a passkey.
I know I have a passkey.
That's why I'm trying to log in with my passkey.
Insane. Crazy.
Yeah. So when it works as it should, I was impressed at how quickly it all logged in. So.
And by the way, passkey support is one of those new features in this Windows update that just came out. Passkey supports in Windows now. Nice.
As
it should be.
Another thing to make Paul grin.
I know. A couple other things. Yeah, it happens. Richard says, see me smile. I'm often happy around him. Given all the Xbox leak stuff and everything else that happened, there's only a couple of minor Xbox stories this week, sorry. The first one regards a Cuphead anniversary update. So Cuphead was a huge hit a couple of years ago. It's that
incredibly difficult
cartoon-style game. It looks like one of the early Mickey Mouse things or maybe an early Warner Brothers cartoon. Really fun-looking game. It is one of the hardest games I've ever played, and I hate how hard this is. And I really felt like they made a big mistake with that because they could have attracted a much broader audience. It's so hard. I don't know if they ever fixed it. I kind of walked away from it. But they're doing it eventually kind of went cross-platform, but there's an anniversary update coming that's going to be Xbox only because this product actually was an Xbox exclusive when it first launched. So that's kind of cool. I don't know because they don't say, or do they say? I don't believe they say. No, they do. Okay, I'm sorry, they do. So it's an automatic download for owners of the game. So you don't have to pay extra for it. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. It will be on Xbox and Windows. So when I say Xbox only, I mean Xbox platform, not Xbox console. I've talked also about Microsoft at some point deprecated and then is getting rid of something called the Xbox Console Companion app for Windows. This was something that actually debuted back with Windows 8. So it's a really out-of-date app. But one of the things it did was let you go in and look at all of your saved screenshots and video clips from the Xbox console. And you could look at them, but you could also download them. So if you wanted to use the computer to maybe edit video or something, you could do that and then share them. Microsoft has long since replaced that with an Xbox app, which is fantastic on any number of levels. It's actually a much nicer app. It's modern, but it doesn't have this feature. And so when they got rid of the Xbox console companion app, I was like, hold on a second. Like, am I missing something? How do I get to my save screenshots and video clips from my PC? And the answer was, you don't. The only thing you could do was go to your console, share to something that would bring it to your PC. And I don't remember the exact options, but there was ways to individually push clips to your PC from the console. I'm like, I don't want to go to my console. Yeah, it's tedious. So Microsoft announced a little while ago that they are going to allow you to, on the console, configure those things to save to OneDrive, this is a win-win. This is a good example of a win-win. It's a win-win for Xbox gamers because that's what some of them will want, like I just described. And it's a win-win for Microsoft because it uses up a lot of storage, and then you can pay for extra storage.
That's so true. Smart. That's very clever.
No, it's smart. It's fine. By the way, there's nothing wrong with a win-win. Like, right? We both benefit. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
So I guess they've been testing this in the Insider program, and it turns out that little scenario I just said, it's going to be a little tilted more one-sided to you, not to Microsoft. They are going to delete uploads to OneDrive after 90 days automatically. They're not going to save them indefinitely. And yeah, that's fine, right? I mean, it's still out there in like Xbox land. I don't know what you call the storage allotment that you get with your Xbox, but you do get one. And you'll know you ran into it when one day you go to take a screenshot and it says, hey, you ran out of space. You don't have any more room for screenshots. And I assume, and I've had to bulk, export, stupid on a console. Yeah. Or delete, right? And whatever it is. So I guess you might still have to do that kind of thing. But if you choose to save directly to OneDrive, I believe what you'll be able to do is not hit your Xbox storage, and then you could just offload these things to a computer and not worry about it, right? Which is, I think, honestly, I think this meets the needs. I'm not really sure a lot of people are trying to archive. Well, you know what? Some people are. But I was going to say not going to archive game footage necessarily, but yeah, probably some people do. So
yeah,
if you want to, you'll be able to. Yeah. It's all good. Anyway, this feature is not, I don't believe it's public, but they're stable. But
a bonus Xbox update in September. Oh, wait, this is September.
This is September. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, that means they must have actually released it. Yes, I'm sorry. They did release it. Yep. It came out in a bonus update. Yeah, usually we get like a monthly update, which they would have called the September update. Excuse me. I thought this was in the Insider program. And it's part of, that's right. It's part of the bonus Xbox. I haven't turned my Xbox on since March. I'm a little disconnected.
Oh, wow. You really are busy, Paul.
Yeah. I'm trying to break an addiction here.
Well,
seems to be going pretty.
Yeah, I was going to say you're doing a great job. Sounds like. Well, up next we do have the back of the book, the tips and picks coming up on Windows Weekly. All right, it is time to head into the tips and picks of the week. First, of course, is our tip of the week. So, look, I am critical and I stress over this stuff, and I've been freaking out about how Windows 11 updates, but I got to tell you, the thing that gets lost in all that is I do think that Windows 11 is where it should have been a couple years ago right now. I think with this fall update /23H2, we are finally in a good place. I'm not saying it's perfect, File Explorer, blah, blah, blah. There's some issues in there, but if you are a Windows 11 user, this is the time to kind of get going on this stuff, because not only do you want to install this update, which you could wait on. I mean, if you wanted to wait 2 weeks, you could get it in October. But you also want to go to the App Store, because a lot of those app updates that Microsoft is promoting, the stuff in Paint, in Photos, in Clipchamp, in Snipping Tool, in the Microsoft Store, actually, are all arriving via separate App Store updates. And I think everything they updated or announced, rather, is available. Some of them may be features that are CFR'd, meaning they come out over a period of time. So like you check today, it's not there, but you check tomorrow and it is there, or something like that. Like that's unfortunately the way a lot of things happen these days. But this is the time. And then we talked before about this notion of, back in August, if you wanted to look forward to what 23H2 was going to be, wanted to get in the beta channel. I'm now curious what's going to happen to us in the beta channel, because I have 3 PCs in the beta channel. And normally well, in every case, in this case, I configured them so that they go back to stable once that release comes out.
Now I don't know what that release is. It's probably 23H2, but even the release preview channel has pushed forward to 23H2. So one thing you might want to do is get in the release preview, and that one you will be able to get out. Like that one kind of occurs, although this push into the 23H2 actually contradicts what I just said, because a lot of people would have been in 23H2 as of last week because Microsoft announced that first fall update preview build. And now they're testing 23H2 features, which again points to the fact that these things are the same thing. But if you want to just kind of stay on the leading edge, well, the semi-leading edge, I guess, and test what's coming right down the pike and be able to get out of there in probably a November timeframe, the release preview is not a bad way to go. And I haven't done this yet, but I believe the build you get now, you'll get that new Teams app, or will eventually get it. It will be, it's in there. It may not be enabled, but you will get it. And there's a little front end I was talking about that you're showing. So if you look at chat today, if you're not running yet on 23H2 or the fall update, there is a front end called chat, which looks a little bit like this or a lot like this. But this is the new front end that's going to be in the Teams free app that's coming in 23H2. Same, it's a simplified front end where you can easily make calls and meetings and stuff without having to launch the full app, which is fun or not. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but honestly, it's pretty good. I feel bad for them because they kind of screwed things around with Skype and using the Teams brand, and it's not the same Teams, and it's confusing. And I think most average consumers would look at this and be like, "I'm not in a team. I don't know anyone who uses Teams. I don't need this." So we'll see. But that's all out there. So that's my tip is to if you're staying up to date, the where you want to be is shifted. And the things you need to do have shifted. And then the app pick is actually for my wife, who I told her was not happy with my Amazon comparison, and made a big point of complaining about all the the featured and sponsored stuff and how tough it is with ads, and you don't know if they're bots and blah blah blah. And she has her own ideas about that stuff. But I said there's got to be a browser plugin for this, and there is. It's called Amazon Ad Blocker. Shocker. And it removes the sponsored content from Amazon.com search pages and other pages. And it works pretty good. I just installed it this morning because this just happened. But I've been going to Amazon. Look, I've been comparing it, against the incognito or private mode, whatever browser. And it seems to do the trick. So if you're not savvy enough to figure out an ad on Amazon.com, get it. Just get this. This will do it.
Get rid of the chef's special on Amazon.com.
Exactly. Especially, exactly. You don't want the fish.
You don't want the fish.
You can send. You can hand it back. You don't. You took it. Why did you take it?
Just throw the special aside. Look at that menu.
I'm sorry. Is that yesterday's sushi? Is that what you're eating? Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's seriously Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I bet that was the special. It was
wow.
The
there you go. At some point, it's cooked fish.
That's right.
Yeah,
I've never seen cooked sushi. That's interesting.
They switched it from they switched from fresh sushi to deep fried sushi.
Yeah, deep fried.
The first day, right. It was curry, and then the third day,
soup on the exactly.
We have a new fish sauce we're putting on everything.
There you go. At the end of the week, it's a fish sauce.
Yeah, it's a weird black color.
All right, Richard Campbell, tell us about Run as Radio.
Fifth time back for Sandy Usia, and a really fun conversation that came from a talk she did a while back where, most folks have shifted their SharePoint instances now to the online product, but not everybody can do it. Often we've done some customizations and things that just aren't going to run in SharePoint Online, and you don't want to give them up. And so you still have an on-premise SharePoint instance. But if you've used the online version, there's some awesome automation features and things that don't exist anywhere else. And what Sandy shows is how you can get some of those features into your online product. And specifically with Power Automate, you can pay for the premium version of Power Automate, and it'll rapidly pay for itself. And you can have access to those capabilities back onto your on-prem instances. And so we ran through a few of the things that folks really, really like in online and wish they had it on-prem. It's like, here's how you do it. And just gave them some ideas on how to take advantage of that. So, you want them all to be up in M365, but it's not always possible. The things they've done to limit the customizations, especially for older versions of SharePoint, have kind of made it tough. And we actually had a great conversation about the idea that SharePoint 2019 is probably the last of the on-prem versions, but it's being turned into sort of a SaaS implementation too, where you're going to get rolling updates and stuff. So the SharePoint guys are trying to find a way to continue to support customers who want to run things on-prem while still having their modern model. So great conversation. I hope folks can take it in. Sandy's just a great thinker in this space.
Awesome. All right, runasradio.com. And now it's time for the brown liquor pick of the week.
Hey, you're going to enjoy this part here, Mike. I appreciate that. But I'm in New Zealand, so I figured I should probably talk about a New Zealand whiskey.
All right.
And there are a few. The whiskey industry in New Zealand is small, goes with the size of the country. There's only been maybe a dozen or so distilleries over time. And for quite a while, there were none. In 97, so there was a distillery down in the southern, in Dunedin, which is in the South Island, called Willowbank, that shut down in 97. Today, they're up to 10. They're not large. They're a tiny little one. And the particular one I'm going to talk about is one of the most recent ones. Only started back in 2017. It's called Pokeno. Pokeno is actually an area. It's south of Auckland, in a somewhat rolling hills, kind of more jungly area than where we are right now. And of course, it's there for one reason: the water. This is a very volcanic island, North Island of New Zealand. And so there are great aquifers and there's phenomenal water in Pokeno. And that's why they put the distillery there. The barley itself comes from 3 different farms down in the South Island. So the barley is New Zealand grown.
Cool.
It's and then they malt it here on the island, and then and grind grist it. They do have Scottish stills that they have imported. The guy behind all of this is a guy named Matt Johns, and Matt is from the UK. He worked many years at Glenmorangie and Tullibardine, and he decided that he wanted to raise his kids in New Zealand, and so came down here and ultimately spent an awful lot of money establishing this distillery. So they do their finishing in bourbon cask, specifically Jack Daniel cask. Because there are not the same restrictions for making whiskey in New Zealand, in fact, there's essentially no rules. While he is following the Scottish style, I'm using only barley and aging in oak. They don't have the same time limitations. So normally you can't call it whiskey unless it's been in the barrel for at least 3 years. Mm-hmm. It's not a requirement here, although you do tend to age that long. But we're also dealing with a more humid and warmer climate. And so aging rates are going to be higher. And so it doesn't make sense to hold them for quite as long. You're going to get a fair bit of heat in the summertime. You always have the higher humidity, so that you're going to battle with alcohol levels. You're actually going to lose water from the barrel, and the alcohol levels are going to rise when it's that humid. So I think they have to manage the cooling a fair bit. And so the result is a very mild whiskey. It's not old. It hasn't been in the barrel for all that long. So the colors are fairly light, and they don't do a lot of treatment to it. It comes up kind of fruity and citrusy, with still a strong alcohol note. This is not the most impressive whiskey you're ever going to drink, in the sense that it's not that big. If you like that big, rich, Aberlour Bunda flavor, okay, we're not there. This is not a sherry cask. This has not been in for 15 years. This is a younger, lighter, sweeter, sort of lightweight whiskey, and it's a fun drink. There's nothing wrong with it, but if you can find them, they run about $60 US. Pokeno says they are exporting it to the US, but I could not find any for sale anywhere. Down here, it's about 100 Kiwi dollars to pick a bottle up, easily available. Very small production, only a few tens of thousands of bottles. So you can, but it's a cool drink. There are a few others, but this particular one struck my fancy, and I recommend it if you can find it.
Cool. Yeah, I like all the branding. They're really selling me. I don't drink, but they're really selling me with that. It's like, oh, I want to try that. The volcanic. I don't know. It was working for me. That's a really cool for sure.
Often we're buying whiskeys for friends. Like, you got a friend, for someone who's a fan of whiskey. This is an unusual whiskey. It's not going to be easy to find. If you can get one, that person's going to covet that bottle, and it comes with a remarkable story of a very young distillery, and in an interesting place.
Very cool. I was going to say at a very remote place.
Very remote, yeah, and remarkable that the internet is held together as well as it had. Don't jinx it.
All right, knock on wood. As we come to the end of this episode of Windows Weekly. Now comes the time where I tell you about where you can watch the show, find it, etc. We record Windows Weekly around about 11 a.m. Pacific every Wednesday. You can tune in at twit.tv/live to watch the show live as we record it. Or if you'd like, you can get the version that's all packaged up neat and tidy by our editor, Kevin, by going to twit.tv/WW. When you go there, you will find buttons to click to subscribe to audio or subscribe to video. And then you'll get to choose your provider, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. I used to say Google Podcasts, but that's about to go away. So you can get it at many
Too soon, man. Too soon.
I know you're right. Too soon. Subscribe again to audio or video formats, whichever one works for you. You can also, if you would like, help to support the ongoing work we do here at Twit and when bringing you these shows every week by joining the club, twit.tv/club. That will get you to twit.tv/club-twit. I don't know why I said that URL twice, but head there and you can join the club starting at $7 a month, $84 a year. When you join the club, you get access to some pretty great perks. First and foremost, you get every single Twitch show with no ads, just the content, because you, in effect, are supporting the shows. You also get access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else behind the scenes, before the show, after the show, but also Club Twit events get published there. So when you join the club, you're going to end up getting access to a huge back catalog of great stuff. You will also get to join the best social media network on the internet. It is the Club Twit Discord. It's a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also those of us here at Twit. Many of our hosts are in there regularly responding during the show, also after the show at times, before the show. So we'd love to have you join. And while the price starts at $7 a month, $84 a year, it's not a tiered subscription. We just heard from some folks who said that they'd like to pay more than $7 a month. So we've given you that option. But if you pay $7 or you pay more, you're going to get everything that I've mentioned here, as well as some special Club Twit exclusive shows. There's the Untitled Linux Show, which is a show all about Linux. You will also gain access to Paul Thurrott's Hands-on Windows program, a short format show that covers Windows tips and tricks. You'll gain access to my Hands-on Apple. No, I always do that. Hands-on Mac. The reason why is because I cover more than just the Mac. It's iPhone, it's iPad, it's everything. But Hands-on Mac is the name of the show, where I've got short format tips and tricks as well. And we also have Scott Wilkinson's Home Theater Geeks in the club. A fun relaunch of that show with lots of interviews, great tips, product reviews. Oh man, it's great stuff. And the newly announced, newly launched. It's in the club. It's all about AI. It's AI Inside from Jason Howell here at Twit as well. So yeah, all these great shows that you can check out at twit.tv/club-twit. Join the club and help us keep making the stuff that we make for you each week. All right, it's time for the plugs and the goodbyes. Let's start with Richard Campbell. Tell us what we can expect from you.
Well, of course, Run As coming out every week. In fact, next week's show will be episode 900. And I'm not going to say it was drank, but definitely pulled a buddy of mine, Dana F., in, and we just chatted a bit about making entirely too many. Well, that's over on Run As Radio. We're in full swing for Dev Intersection, which is the first week of December in Orlando. You can go to devintersection.com to take a look at that. And, of course, .NET Rocks still ticking along, talking about .NET development. .netrocks.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Richard. And Paul Thurrott, tell us about where folks can find you.
What do I have? Well, Thurrott.com, obviously the main site. I'm most active on Twitter. I'm going to keep calling it that. Also at Thurrott. Books are at leanpub.com. The Windows 11 Field Guide, which is about to get a massive update for fall update /23H2 and Windows Everywhere, of course. And I've been working to kind of fix our YouTube channel, which I had let languish for a long time. So we've got about 300 videos up there that are just kind of Microsoft-oriented insider type things. And then, of course, First Ring Daily, the podcast I did with Brad, is there as well. So
awesome. All right.
I'm out there.
Yes, you can find him. You can find him. I am at Micah Sargent on many a social media network, or head to chihuahua.coffee, CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. Check out the different shows I do on the network: iOS Today, Ask the Tech Guys, Tech News Weekly. And of course, as always, I thank you both for letting me join you this week. Leo Laporte will be back. It's always
good to see you, man.
Thank you. And Leo Laporte will be back next week. So if you were missing him, don't worry. He'll be back soon when the cows come home. And
like the Windows XP screens ever.
Isn't it? It's just perfect. It's just perfect. Yeah. Wow. Sorry for the folks listening. We're just looking at a beautiful paddock, and yeah, I don't know. It's gorgeous. It looks like it's.
I expect to see like a unicorn go galloping across the lawn. You know?
Certainly, a rainbow will appear all of a sudden. Folks, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Windows Weekly. They will see you next week, and so will Leo Laporte. Bye-bye.
Come join us on This Week in Enterprise Tech. Expert co-host and I talk about the enterprise world, and we're joined by industry professionals and trailblazers like CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, every acronym role, plus IT pros and marketeers. We talk about technology, software plus services, security, you name it, everything under the sun. You know what? I learn something each and every week, and I bet you will too. So definitely join us. And of course, check out the twit.tv website and click on This Week in Enterprise Tech. Subscribe today.